Hey, what's up guys, it's your boy KCM What Ifs. Today we are gonna be reading The Turn of a Hero, or What If Naruto Left Jiraiya and Betrayed Konoha. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Chaos. More chaos. And guess what? Even more chaos. Civilians everywhere ran and screamed for their lives to get into one of the evacuation shelters till this nightmare passed. And what nightmare could that be, you may be wondering to yourself? Well, I'm glad you asked. That nightmare is one that is found in almost everyone's mind at some point in time: zombies. Everywhere both dead shinobi and civilians came out of the ground and attacked anyone that they saw wasn't one of them. Which wasn't really hard to distinguish. I mean, the people that were actually alive were running and screaming everywhere. The zombie themselves, they merely walked until one idiotic civilian ran into them, in which case they would all gang up against that one person. And why should they bother to run in the first place? They had all the time in the world after all, and they were dead. This was occurring at every gate entrance to the village, but the most concentrated force was at the main gate of all these four. There we see Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, and Lee fighting the zombies and protecting civilians at the same time, alongside many other nameless average Konoha shinobi. Only problem though was that since they were already dead, the zombies shrugged off everything that they threw at them. This endless fighting was draining them from their stamina, except for Lee. He was kicking and punching zombies left and right with an enthusiastic smile on his face. Another interesting fact was that the ground at each entrance of the village was pushed up as if an earthquake had occurred. The weird-looking rock had bones, heads, and those kinds of things within it, something which made Ino shiver in disgust when she had first seen it. One figure covered in a cloak stood on top of said weird-looking rock at the main entrance. If one were to be able to see his face, he or she would see the smirk on the person's face. This should be easy as hell. Just what the hell is going on out there, screamed Tsunade within her office as she watched the chaos occurring within the village. Kabuto himself was frowning at the moment. This wasn't something that they needed at the moment. With everything else happening, they needed to prepare themselves for the upcoming Kage meeting as well as the most likely war that would occur afterwards. This wasn't the time for some idiot trying to take some petty revenge on Konoha. The revenge they needed to watch out for was from Naruto, not this. Kabuto sighed. Really, how this village hasn't been destroyed yet is a miracle. It's like everyone is targeting it. We need to find whoever is behind this and take care of him or her, stated Kabuto. Before Tsunade could respond, she jumped back from the window just as someone jumped through the glass of said window. The person landed on her desk, making documents concurring with village matters to fly all around the office. Tsunade scowled as she stood next to Kabuto. Well, it seems he came to us then, said Kabuto with a smirk. This just makes things easier. The person who had barged in through the window was a young boy of 16. He had shoulder-length bluish-gray hair and wore what Tsunade knew was the standard monk uniform from the Fire Temple. He brought out his right arm, which both Kabuto and Tsunade noticed that it was not a regular human arm. What is that, thought both Tsunade and Kabuto, although the latter was more interested in researching it for his quest to become even more powerful than the Rikudo Sennin. Senju Tsunade, said the boy, you will die here today. Tsunade snorted and reappeared behind the boy. You're waiting too early in trying to challenge me, brat. Now you mind telling me just what is it that you're planning on doing? Or should I simply break every bone in your body? The boy snarled and brought out his right beastly arm, swung on toward Tsunade, who caught it effortlessly with a bored look on her face. That look changed to shock however as red chakra began to appear on the arm, which burned her right hand that she had used to grab the arm. Tsunade frowned as she retracted her hand. The boy scowled and jumped through the window that he had used to get in. Tsunade walked up to the now broken window as she held her hand that was burned thanks to the red chakra and tried to heal it as she watched the boy jumping away on top of rooftops. What was that? Asked Kabuto as he walked up next to her. I don't know, answered Tsunade as she looked at her hand, but something tells me that we haven't seen anything yet. Kushina could only sweat dropped as she watched the commotion unfold on the streets from her position on the rooftops along with both Naruto and Mito. Zombies? She said uncertainty. Mito nodded. It would appear so. So fucking cliché. Muttered Naruto. Mito looked at both of them. Do you two have any idea as to who could be behind this? Naruto shrugged. Hell if I know. I mean, I think I would have remembered someone that can bring people back as zombies. Kushina shook her head. If Naruto-kun doesn't know, then it's even less likely that I did. Mito sighed. Well, I suppose we have to simply find them then. Oi, brat. There's something else. What? Someone here apparently has my chakra. What? Said Naruto with narrowed eyes, a look missed by Mito as she had her eyes closed and was concentrating at the moment, but Kushina caught it. Yes, but whoever this person is has no control of it whatsoever. I can feel my consciousness that has formed there trying to escape. Now since it's my chakra in the first place, I personally believe that we should capture this person and take it back. I agree with you on that, thought Naruto. I've found them, said Mito as she opened her eyes. Where to? Asked Naruto. There's one nearby, but something is odd about him, responded Mito. What is it? Asked Kushina. Mito frowned as she answered, if I'm not mistaken, I felt Kyuubi's chakra from within him. That's him. Naruto smirked as he caught sight of the person that they were talking about as he jumped from rooftop to rooftop. He disappeared in a dark flash and reappeared right in front of the boy and kicked him back into a wall. Mito had a curious look on her face as she saw this. Did he just disappear in a black flash? She asked Kushina. Kushina nodded. Yes, although I'm not entirely sure how it works, but apparently it doesn't require any type of seals. Now that is interesting. Muttered Mito with a smirk. She then turned away from where Naruto was beginning to walk towards the boy. Come on. That boy is not the only one that is involved here. Let's go have some fun. Kushina's face turned into an identical smirk that Mito had. Let's go then. They disappeared. Naruto picked up the boy that was struggling to get himself out of the wall and held him up by the boy's throat. The boy scowled or the closest he could do to it, and the red chakra from before began to appear, except it was coming out of his entire body this time. Oh, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow, so you do possess Kurama's chakra. He then smirked as he began to absorb the chakra coming out of the boy. I'm not sorry to say that will not work on me. The boy now had a panicking look on his face. How? He managed to ask. Naruto merely shrugged. It's simple really. Unlike you, I'm used to this chakra and can use it properly. He smirked again as the absorbed chakra began to surround Naruto in a swirl and the head of Kurama appeared next to Naruto. And there's also the fact that the real owner of this chakra prefers me over you. He held the boy's throat even harder, causing the said teenage boy to begin to cough. What's your name anyway? Asked Naruto. Sora. And how did you come about this chakra in the first place? Questioned Naruto further. I don't know. It's been with me ever since I was born. I see. Muttered Naruto before crushing the boy's, now identified as Sora, throat. Naruto let go of the now dead corpse. It went crashing down the street below, but the few people that were actually present and alive were too busy trying to hide in order to live to pay any attention to what had just occurred. Oh yes, that felt good. Naruto chuckled before realizing that both Kushina and Mito were gone. One of his eyebrows twitched. Did they just ditch me? It seems so. But look at this way now, we don't have anyone nagging at us telling us if we can't do this or that or whatever. Naruto smirked as he took out a sword, from somewhere. You're right. I haven't used my sword in a while. I guess no time is better than now. With that he jumped into the street below where he proceeded to slice anyone down, no matter if they were a zombie, a civilian, or a shinobi. A man with long white hair and a staff in his hand could be sitting down on a tree branch in one of the many forests in Konoha. It won't take long for Sora to return, he thought, then I'll summon my old team members to use that jutsu. Then, the only needed king will remain. We have company, said a striking beautiful redhead leaning on the tree trunk. The man glanced towards the direction of the village in time to see two other redheads walking towards them. What do we have here, he thought to himself. Mito and Kushina looked up to see the man standing up and jumping down and landed in front of the redheads. The other redhead appeared next to the man's side. Mito looked at the man with a bored look and then glanced at the redhead. Now this is interesting, thought Mito. Could she be? May I help you two ladies? Asked the man with what he presumed to be a charming smile. No, you can't, stated Mito coldly, you are merely a hindrance. No, you're lower than that. The man narrowed his eyes. Do you know who I am? I'm Furito. The man that will make the land of fire reach its full potential. And the only way to do that is to destroy Konoha and its king along the way. Even though I share your sentiment about Konoha, began Mito, like I stated before, you're a fool and an annoyance. Now die. Furito made to bring his staff up to block any attacks from the redhead, but he found that he couldn't move his arms. Hell, he couldn't move his body, period. Mito chuckled at seeing Furito's scared look. You really do talk too much, you know, she stated as she brought her left hand up to a ram sign. But once again, you're a fool. Furito, what's wrong? Asked the redhead next to him as she tried to help him, but found that she herself couldn't move. What the hell, she thought. You will stay there, said Mito, glancing at her. Kushina for her part was staring at the scene in awe. She could now see what Mito had done to both Furito and the woman, and it shocked her to her core. Just when did she have the time to construct this seal, she wondered as she gazed at the patterns of the seal surrounding both Furito and the other redhead. It stops movement, paralyzing whoever is inside, she thought as she studied it and then glanced at Mito. Her mastery of Fuinjutsu is just completely out of anyone's reach. I don't think anyone has come close to her level. Except maybe for the Rikudo Sennin. Mito took out a kunai from one of the sleeves of her kimono. Well, this is it for you, she said to Furito and threw it straight at Furito's head, hitting dead on. Furito's body fell face first to the ground. So it doesn't apply to someone who is dead, realized Kushina. Mito then turned towards the woman. May I ask who you are? Asked Mito. The woman narrowed her eyes. Why should I tell you anything? Mito shrugged. Probably because we're family, she answered, making Kushina's eyes widen. The woman laughed. Oh, that's a good one. You? My family? That's the most stupid dash. She stopped talking when she saw Mito's eyes turning emotionless. I would stop talking if I were you, she stated, or else I'll simply kill you instead of trying to actually make you use your life for something useful. The woman frowned. I guess there's nothing to lose. If I piss her off, I'll die. Fine, she said out loud, my name is Fuka. Mito nodded. I see. Well then Fuka, you mind telling me why exactly you were following that idiot? She asked, pointing towards Furito's dead body. Fuka chuckled. The truth? She shrugged. It's because I was bored. There was nothing for me to do before he asked me to join him, so I figured that following him would keep me out of my boredom. That dream of his? I don't care at all about kings or making the land of fire achieve its destiny. She chuckled some more when she said that. So what now? Are you going to kill me? Mito smirked. Of course not, because you have just passed, she responded as the seal formula on the ground disappeared. Fuka moved every part of her body to make sure it was working like before and then faced Mito. I don't know what you mean by passing, but something tells me that what you're doing is not idiotic as what Furito was up to. Mito nodded. That's correct, and considering that this involves your heritage as well, I'm sure you'll want to be part of this. Fuka frowned. What do you mean? Are you an orphan? Asked Mito. Fuka nodded. Yes, I am. As long as I can remember, I was in an orphanage before the head mother sold me to slave traders. After that, I worked to become strong enough to not rely on others. I see, said Mito. So you have never wondered who your parents were? Or where you come from? Fuka shrugged. Not really. It doesn't matter to me. Can you miss something that you never had? I don't think so. Mito smiled. I respect that. But then she turned serious. But I can tell you where exactly you are from and as to why you were an orphan. Oh, said Fuka. Please enlighten me. You're an Uzumaki, began Mito, a clan which comes from the village Yuzushiogakyur from Yuzu. It's a clan that specializes in fuinjutsu and have large amounts of chakra as well as live for a long time. We're also known for our striking red hair. Fuka momentarily glanced at her hair. Mito continued. Our clan was a very powerful one, something that the other nations feared. So they decided to eradicate us. Of course, we never stood a chance against the combined force of 3 major villages. We were but only one clan after all. But we did manage to wipe about half of the combined force, though. That's how powerful we were, Noir, and we could have been saved by Konoha. Yuzu and Konoha were supposed allies because of the fact that they are related to the Senju clan who founded Konoha. But as fate would have it, that supposed alliance was all just on paper. They found out about the invasion but didn't do anything to help us. They turned their backs to us and let us rot. Now it's our turn to strike back. To show them that no one crosses the Uzumaki without any consequences. Fuka pondered the newly acquired information. It came as a surprise to her. That she came from such a prestigious clan, but that was it. While I thank you for telling me this, began Fuka, I already told you that it doesn't matter to me where I came from, it doesn't concern me. Not including the fact that they killed your parents, retorted Mito. Fuka's eyes widened slightly at that. How would you know if my parents were killed or not? Mito smirked. Fuka, the same name I gave you. Fuka's eyes widened completely at that, and so did Kushina, who was listening intently the whole time. What bullshit are you sprouting now? Screamed Fuka. I traveled to Yuzu after the attack, explained Mito, and there during my trying to find any survivors, I found you. Your parents were laying in a protective embrace around you, dead. I'm not sure how you survived, but it didn't matter to me. I took you and took care of you. Of course I couldn't bring you back to Konoha, so I left you in an orphanage with specific orders for you to take care of you. She chuckled bitterly. It wasn't till later when I was almost on my deathbed did I find out that you had been sold. But by then, I couldn't do anything anymore. Mito looked down. That was my mistake. I should have found a better way. I'm sorry for that. Fuka by this point couldn't stand anymore. She is kneeling and looking down. She couldn't describe what she felt at the moment. What was she supposed to feel? So, you saved me, whispered Fuka. Mito sighed. Yes I did, but then I left you for dead in a sense. So I suppose that it is even. But I just wanted for you to know what had happened. How did you know it was me? Asked Fuka. Mito smiled. Well, you've obviously grown up. Your face still resembles that of the baby that I found that day. I just wanted to confirm that it was you. Fuka chuckled quietly. I never expected this. She muttered. Mito walked up to her and kneeled beside her. I ask you once again, will you please join us? Fuka looked up at Mito and smirked even though there were a few tears coming down. Like I said, I was bored. I guess this will kill that. There's no end to this, screamed Ino. She was panting as a new wave of zombies began to appear out of the ground. Shikamaru could only nod. Yeah, It seems that taking care of that guy will be the only way to end this, he said, pointing to the man on top of the rock structure without his cloak anymore. It's a good thing that Furito taught me this jutsu, thought the man. Oi, Fudo, said a woman as she appeared next to the newly identified Fudo. What is Fuin? Asked Fudo, confused. She was supposed to have made the signal to summon the other members of 12 Guardian Shinobi. Sora is dead, stated the newly identified Fuin. What? Said Fudo, shocked. Furito would not take to this well at all. Who did it? Before she could respond, a shockwave from down below caught their attention. Shikamaru shielded his eyes from the afterblast of the shockwave. What is it now? He thought. Shikamaru, muttered Choji. Shikamaru glanced at his best friend to see his troubled look. Choji merely pointed to where the blast had come from. Shikamaru followed and his eyes widened as he saw Naruto standing there. Naruto, thought Shikamaru. What is he doing here? Naruto-kun, said Lee. Lee, said Shikamaru, making the young shinobi look at him. Go tell Tsunade-sama about this immediately. You're the fastest one of us, so go. Yash, said Lee with a salute before taking off. You better hurry, Lee. Thought Shikamaru. So it's those two over there, huh? Naruto mentally nodded. It would seem so. Time to play for real. It was him, stated Fuin as she pointed at Naruto. Fudo smirked as he looked at Naruto. That brat, huh? I'll make him regret that he ever crossed us. The remaining surviving Konoha shinobi looked at Naruto with hatred in their eyes, the gratitude for him having defeated Haiden before now completely gone. One shinobi brought out a kunai and charged at Naruto. Die, he screamed. He didn't take notice of the fact that Naruto's usual crystal blue eyes were no longer the same. As he brought the kunai down, a force blew him all the way back to where Fuin and Fudo were. What the, thought Fudo. Fuin narrowed her eyes. Is that his ability to manipulate forces, thought Shikamaru. It no doubt has something to do with those eyes of his. What do we do in Shikamaru? Asked Ino. I don't know, answered Shikamaru. Fudo jumped down from the rock and landed on the ground. You blonde brat, he said, pointing at Naruto. You're going to die here today. Naruto merely snorted at that. That's it, he thought. Bansho Tenin. What the fuck, thought Fudo as he was pulled forward. You will die here today, said Naruto as he brought his sword forward. Fuin's eyes were wide as Fudo was stabbed. How? Why you bastard, said Fudo, blood coming out of his mouth. Naruto snorted again. Seriously, if that's all you got, then you should have never said that you would kill me. All around, the zombies began to dissolve into dust. Even the weird-looking rock formation began to disappear, making Fuin jump off. Naruto grabbed Fudo's left shoulder, and as he pulled his arm back, a white figure began to come out, making Fudo's eyes widened. You're done for, stated Naruto as he finished retracting Fudo's soul. By this time, Fudo's face was full of fear as a weird-looking face appeared behind the blonde. Naruto merely threw the now soulless body into the King of Hell's mouth. Afterwards, it disappeared. Just what happened, thought Shikamaru. You're next, said Naruto, talking to Fuin. Fuin took a step back, making Naruto smirk. Sorry, but you won't be getting away, he stated. I don't have time to do any of my traps, thought Fuin. My only option is to run. Oi, don't forget about us, said the remaining Konoha shinobi as they all launched any jutsu that they possessed towards Naruto, be it fire-based, or lightning or earth-based. That they would forget that Fuin was their original enemy just because Naruto was here. Then damn, they must really do hate Naruto. Naruto rolled his eyes. For the love of... He merely brought his right arm up and right in front of their eyes, all of their jutsu simply disappeared. Or that's what it looked like to them. You're all annoyances, said Naruto. Shinra Tensei. That was the sight that both Tsunade and Kabuto arrived to see, all the Konoha shinobi being blown back, including them. Fuin covered her eyes as she was out of range of the blast, thankfully. Or that's what she thought. Her eyes widened as she felt pain in her chest. She looked down to see the tip of a sword sticking out. "I haven't forgotten about you," said Naruto from behind her. He pulled his sword out and she fell on the ground, bleeding to death. "Naruto," screamed Tsunade as she stepped forward. "You will not escape, you got that." Naruto for the first time got the time to study the shinobi behind her. Let's just say that there were a lot. A challenge, I love challenges, thought Naruto. Before he could do anything, however, a voice spoke up. "We leave you for about an hour and this happens," commented Mito as she, Kushina, and Fuka appeared beside Naruto. Naruto snorted. "You were the ones who ditched me, so I'm sorry if I got bored." Kushina shook her head. "Really, you're just, I don't know." Naruto chuckled. "Exactly." Mito stepped up, making Tsunade see her fully for the first time. "Well, you have certainly grown up, Tsunade," said Mito with a smile. "I'm sorry, but do I know you?" said Tsunade. Mito shook her head. "To think that you've forgotten about your dear grandmother who loved you so much," said Mito with a sad look on her face. It was clearly sarcastic though. Tsunade's eyes widened. What? The rest of the Konoha shinobi behind her looked unsure. "Mito Abakan?" Mito smirked. "You remember me now?" Tsunade's mouth opened but no words came out. "Tsunade-sama," thought Sakura from within the gathered shinobi. "Naruto-kun," thought Hinata, looking at Naruto. "Well," said Naruto as he stepped up as well, Rinnegan glowing, "now that the pleasantries are over, let's get this show on the road." Kabuto chuckled as the last of his snakes brought him the last samples that he needed. "Yes," he thought as he held one small tube containing blood, "with all of this, I am now prepared for the Uchihas as well as Naruto-kun." He laughed as he readjusted his glasses. "Yes, I am prepared. Now Naruto-kun, you make your move." Within underground Konoha, where things seemed to be relatively calm unlike how things really were on the surface, one old man was up to his old tricks again. "Hey, what is this? Let me go, you bastards," screamed a tied-up Fu as members of Danzo's route dragged her to the middle of a room which was surrounded by a big seal. Despite the situation she found herself in, Fu couldn't help but to be amazed at the seal designs. Of course she didn't understand any of it since she had no skill whatsoever in Fuinjutsu, but it still looked pretty interesting to her. But this brings us to what led to this situation. Fu herself didn't know what was going on at the moment. All she knew for sure was that she was awoken from strong and violent shakes that seemed to have been caused by an earthquake or something of the sort. Then the door to her room was opened by the two Root Umbu members that were dragging her at the moment, placed a seal on her forehead, overpowered her, tied her up, and then proceeded to drag her out the room. Where to? She had no idea. She scowled as they literally threw her into the center of the room. She tried to use her chakra to use her jutsu to escape, but like before when she had tried to do it also when the Umbu had tried to tie her, she couldn't. Even though she didn't want to rely on Komiai's chakra, she tried calling on it as that was her last resort, but then she found out that she couldn't do that also. Now she started to panic. What's going on here, she wondered to herself. It's time to put you to good use, stated Danzo as he walked into the room followed by two more of his operatives. Now that she studied the room, Fu could see that members of Root were everywhere. Fu scowled again. What the hell are you talking about? She asked as stood up on her knees. And let me go. I wished there would have been more time to train you, began Danzo, ignoring her question, since I would have preferred for you to have been able to do this by yourself, but there is no choice at the moment. Answer me, screamed Fu. Danzo didn't reply. He merely brought his hand that was not covered in bandages to the ram seal, his cane falling to the ground. Pain began to course through Fu's body as the seal on the ground around her began to glow. "Now, it's time for you to be a service for the good of Konoha," stated Danzo emotionlessly. Fu could only scream in pain as Komiai's chakra began to surround her. On the surface, the scene before us could very well be the same as to what had occurred that night about 16 years ago. The differences were that of course the Hokage monument had another face of a Hokage added to it, and the fact that Kurama looked different from what he did that night. Kurama himself couldn't help but be excited as he stared at the terrified Konoha shinobi before him. He had waited to do this for a short time in his experience of time, of course. He was an ageless being, so 16 years in time wasn't that much for him. But the point of the matter was that he would finally finish what he couldn't do 16 years ago. Of course, it had all been set up by Obito's other self, but after the Yondaime had liberated him from Tobi's control, it had been all him. And since the Yondaime or anyone else that could do the same as the Yondaime was not here to stop him, he would finally crush Konoha. "Kakashi-sensei," said Sakura fearfully from her spot next to said shinobi, a look of fright on her face, "what are we going to do?" "I don't know," answered Kakashi. He himself was not liking the situation at the moment. Well, who would? Well, if you cared about Konoha you wouldn't, but let's not go there. Troublesome, thought both Shikaku and Shikamaru at the same time. How are we going to deal with this, thought Shikaku. Kurama roared, making the Konoha shinobi that were gathered to step back as Kurama let his chakra be felt by all even if they weren't sensors. "Oi, Kurama," said Naruto as he stood on top of Kurama's head in his bijou mode, "there's no time for playing here." "Heh, and what about that complicated plan of yours? With what we're doing here, doesn't it make all that pointless now?" "No, it doesn't," stated Naruto, making Kurama confused. "What do you mean by that?" Naruto shook his head. "There's no time to explain now, whatever." Kurama turned his attention to the gathered shinobi once more only to see a group of shinobi that were his size now. "When did this happen?" "It's pointless," said Naruto out loud as he gazed at the Akimichi that had used their expansion jutsu. "We'll see about that," replied Choza with his bow staff in his right hand. That seemed like some sort of signal as the rest of the Akimichi charged at Kurama. "I take it this is part of your strategy," said Kakashi to Shikaku. "It's our only shot," simply responded Shikaku. "Surround him," declared Choza to his fellow clansmen. Naruto merely sighed as the Akimichi surrounded Kurama and held him there with their strength thanks to their big size at the moment. "Really, idiots." Kurama himself didn't even try to move as the Akimichi held him back. Choza brought his bow staff over his head and brought it down upon Kurama, but it was stopped by another Naruto with one hand. "What?" thought Choza. "Impossible," thought Shikaku from the ground. "But it doesn't matter. Now for the Yamanaka clan too." He didn't get to finish the rest of his thoughts as the Akimichi that were holding Kurama began to scream in pain, Choji included, who was in the group. "Really," said Naruto, "for all of you to be stupid enough to actually touch demonic chakra with your bare hands." Naruto shook his head. "That's just simply beyond stupidity." Shikaku's eyes widened. "How could I be such an idiot?" The Naruto that held the bow staff simply snapped it in two, making Choza take a step back. He didn't get far as the clone charged at him with a wind-style Rasen Shuriken, hitting Choza dead on. The end result, well, let's just say it wasn't pretty. "Dad!" screamed Choji as he momentarily forgot about the pain from his burnt hands thanks to chakra burns from touching Kurama's chakra. "I'm still here," declared Kurama as he charged at all the injured Akimichi. "Get back," ordered Kakashi to all the shinobi as Kurama charged. "I don't get it," said Fuka with a confused look on her face as she stood on Kurama's back next to Kushina and watched as the battle proceeded. "We're touching Kyuubi's chakra as well, but we're not harmed." "It's simple really," replied Kushina calmly. "Naruto-kun here has both a level of mastery and of friendship with Kyuubi that he can control as to whom he wants Kyuubi's chakra to be harmful to. That, and of course there's also the fact that I was the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi before him, and that we're also both from the Uzumaki clan who can handle the chakra of that of a bijou. I see. Muttered Fuka as she refocused back on the battle. Choji, retreat, screamed Shikamaru to his best friend. But it was no use. Kurama was simply too fast for that of a member from the Akimichi clan. Choji brought his already injured hands forward to block Kurama. Shikaku gritted his teeth and turned towards Inoichi. Do it, he said simply as Choji began to scream in pain. And no one attacks at the moment, he said to the other shinobi. Shintenshin no jutsu, said Inoichi. Inoichi then found himself within a sewer. What is this, he thought to himself as he looked around. I was supposed to go. Sorry, said someone from behind him, making Inoichi turn around, but he wasn't fast enough. He found a sword implanted in his chest. He turned to look back to see Naruto's dark look. I really don't like people who try to invade my mind, said Naruto darkly. In the real world, Inoichi's body simply fell to the ground. Dad, said Ino as she ran and kneeled next to her father's downed body. What happened, thought Shikaku. This isn't working, observed Kakashi. Well no shit, time to get rid of you vermin, declared Kurama as he gazed at Choji's pained look. I'm impressed that you have managed to last this long, but this is it for you. Kurama's mouth opened as blue and dark red chakra began to form into a purplish ball of chakra. Bijadama. Choji screamed in pain as the strongest attack of a bijou hit him dead on at point-blank range. To keep it simple, his body was simply blown up into pieces. No, screamed Shikamaru as he fought to stop the tears from falling. Kakashi cursed as he saw this. Everyone, attack now, he declared to all the other shinobi. They in return fired every long-range jutsu that they knew. The jutsus all ranged from fire, water, earth, lighting, and even some wind-based ones. I thought we had already cleared this up, began Naruto calmly, as he brought his right arm forward, Rinnegan activated, but any type of jutsu will not work with me anymore. All the Konoha shinobi could only stare wide-eyed as all their combined attacks were simply absorbed by the blonde Jinchuriki. This is not good, observed Shikaku, the Akimikis are down, so is Inoichi, and it seems that ninjutsu will really not work on him. Just what are those eyes? Wow! Fuka was wide-eyed as she watched on. Kushina simply smirked. That's my son. On the roof of the Hokage building, another battle was taking place at the moment. One between relatives, a granddaughter fighting her grandmother. Now does that sound weird to anyone else? Tsunade couldn't keep the irritation out of her face as Mito seemed to dodge all her punches and kicks with ease. Hell, she even had a smirk on her face. Mito jumped back as Tsunade paused to catch her breath. I hate to say it, began Mito as she looked at her granddaughter, but I must say that I am disappointed. Tsunade scowled. Don't count me out yet, she retorted. I haven't even started yet. Well that's good, responded Mito calmly, because if all you can do is to swing wildly at me, then we should simply stop right now. Your strength is formidable, but what good does it do if you can't even land a single hit on me? Tsunade gritted her teeth and charged at her grandmother once more. And once again Mito gracefully avoided all the attacks that Tsunade sent her way. How is she good at taijutsu, thought Tsunade as she continued her barrages of attacks. I thought that she simply excelled in Fuinjutsu. Mito smirked as she noticed her granddaughter's frustrated look and for the first time made a counterattack. Tsunade's eyes widened as Mito did a low kick aimed for her legs that had her landing on her ass and a strong punch to the guy that had her flying back to one of the columns. Mito shook her head as Tsunade tried to get up. Really Tsunade, did you really think that just because Fuinjutsu is my specialty that I wouldn't know anything else? While it is true that I prefer Fuinjutsu, the fact of the matter is that one must never rely on one skill alone so that one can fall back on something if your preferred skill fails. Tsunade gritted her teeth as she stood up. But you haven't even used Fuinjutsu yet. Mito nodded her head. True, but that's because I wanted to fight you in taijutsu to see how I would fare against you. She then frowned. Of course, I never expected it to be this easy. Tsunade could only scowl in response. Just why must you do this? Mito frowned at that. It should be obvious by this point, shouldn't it? Konoha betrayed my clan, it's as simple as that. And why are you yourself protecting this place? Have you forgotten that we, Uzumakis, are related to the Senju? Konoha has basically betrayed its very founders since they have also done the same thing to the Uchihas. The Uchihas are traitors, exclaimed Tsunade. Mito shrugged. Yes, they are, but are you any better then? Konoha betrayed the Uzumakis, meaning that this village is a traitor as well. Haven't you thought of that? Tsunade looked down. I just simply want to protect what my family left behind, it's all I have left. Mito shook her head. You really are an idiot, aren't you? Can't you see that I'm here? Tsunade sighed and shook her head. You're not the same person that you once were. Mito chuckled bitterly. I suppose I'm not that ignorant fool you mean. In that case, I actually prefer who I am now. Before the conversation could go any further, a big explosion in the middle of the village caught their attention. Naruto, who was still on top of Kurama's head, narrowed his Rinnegan eyes as he saw the explosion and what had caused it. This chakra. I know it, he thought. So do I. What now? Said Kakashi as he looked to the center of the village. The Baijidama that had killed Choji had kept going even after killing Choji, destroying a lot of buildings and even taking a bunch of shinobi in the process. The sight that greeted them really was the last straw for the average Konoha shinobi that was present at the moment. Most of them relieved themselves, if you know what I mean. And what sight was that? The sight of another Bijou, or more precisely Fu, taking the form of Chome. The Nanabai. Thought Naruto as his hands became fists at his sides. Danzo, you piece of shit. How? Said Kakashi with wide eyes as he looked at the other Bijou. Shikaku scowled, knowing full well who was behind this. Danzo, to think you would go as far as this. What is that? Asked Fuka as she pointed at Chome. Kushina sighed. Trouble, that's what. Kurama, said Naruto so that only Bijou could hear him, we're going to take care of him without killing Fu. Kurama frowned at this. He of course could take care of Chome. He had done so in the past. But that was when he had not held back at all, aiming for the kill. But now that was not possible. Delicacy was not one of his strong points. I'll try. He muttered. Naruto didn't reply. Forgetting about the gathered and frightened Konoha shinobi that still remained, both Naruto and Kurama focused their complete attention to the approaching Chome, who was charging his own Baijidama. Oh, no you don't, declared Kurama as he began to do the same. Kakashi's eyes widened when he saw this. If one of those things could cause so much damage, what would two do? Especially if they collided with each other? Everyone get back. Both Kurama and Chome fired at the same time. Baijidama. Then the end result? A hell of an explosion. On the rooftop of the Hokage building, both Tsunade and Mito shielded their eyes from the blast and the brightness that came with it. Danzo, thought Tsunade bitterly, as if I didn't have enough problems to deal with. Mito for her part frowned as the blast began to die down, not expecting this at all. Both women then turned to look to Mito's right, or for Tsunade, Mito's left, to see Obito appearing in a vortex. You, said Mito quietly as she gazed at one of the surviving Uchiha members. Tsunade narrowed her eyes as she immediately recognized the man to be an Uchiha, but didn't know who exactly he was. I take it you're the famous Uzumaki Mito that I've heard so much about, stated Obito as he looked at Mito. Oh, said Mito with a raised eyebrow. And who did you hear that from? Uchiha Madara, he simply said. So Madara told you about me, huh? Said Mito. Should I be flattered? Obito chuckled. No fucking clue. He then turned serious. This wasn't part of the plan. Mito shrugged in return. I don't even know the plan, so. Oi, I'm still here, you know, said Tsunade, irritated that she had been forgotten. Oh yes, said Mito calmly, it was fun seeing my granddaughter again, but it seems that our time has come to an end. You won't get away, declared Tsunade as she made to run to stop her grandmother only to scream in pain as electricity shot out of the ground. Mito chuckled when this happened. You were wondering when I would use Fuinjutsu? Well, here it is. How? Asked Tsunade through the pain. Mito shrugged in response. We were fighting in hand-to-hand combat, you know. That gives one plenty of opportunity to plant a seal on his or her opponent without him or her noticing. Tsunade's eyes widened when she heard this. Every time you move, lighting will shock you until I am out of range of a certain area, said Mito and then turned to Obito, and you, let's go. We've concluded our business here for the moment. Obito raised an eyebrow. And Naruto? Mito scoffed at that. He can very well take care of himself, now let's go. Obito shrugged and placed his left hand on Mito's right shoulder and the two disappeared in the same vortex that Obito had arrived in. Fuck. That was the only thing that Tsunade could say about the situation at the moment. Naruto jumped down from Kurama's head to land next to Fu's downed form. He kneeled next to her to see major injuries to her body. Naruto, said Kurama from within Naruto's mind, Chome has just been informed of what has happened. It seems that our old friend Danzo found a way to forcefully transform Fu into her complete Bijou mode. Now since Fu has never done this and hadn't properly prepared her body for the stress from the massive amount of chakra, she's in critical condition. If she doesn't get any medical treatment. Naruto merely picked up Fu's bridal style before jumping back on top of Kurama's head. How far can you go away from me and still retain your form? Asked Naruto, still communicating through their mind link. Kurama frowned. Not very far. Say just about outside the village? Kurama nodded. Yes, but why dash? Never mind that. Naruto placed Fu down in front of Kushina and Fuka. Kurama will take you out of the village, stated Naruto as he made to jump off. Wait, said Kushina, stopping Naruto, what will you do? There's something that I have to do before we leave, answered Naruto without turning around. He then jumped off and Kurama took to running out of the village. Naruto landed in the newly formed crater and was now present in the middle of the village just as the rest of the Konoha shinobi caught up and appeared the next moment. That wasn't very wise, Naruto, stated Kakashi as he stepped forward, now I'm going to have to ask you to give up. You're surrounded. And indeed, all around Naruto, the entire population of Konoha shinobi were there to save those that were currently escorting and guarding the civilians that were in the evacuation shelters. Naruto looked around coldly, his Rinnegan intensifying his gaze. Even the most hardened veterans like Kakashi and Guy shivered as a cold chill ran up their spine. Danzo, I can't sense him, thought Naruto, but no matter. I now have all the secrets to his operations, but for a parting gift. Take this as a preview of what is to come, said Naruto loudly and darkly, because the next time that I do come back, it won't be simply for this. I'll wipe you out of the face of the planet. With that, Naruto actually flew up into the air until he was far enough to complete his jutsu. What is he doing? Wondered Kakashi. Guy, who was next to him, was actually looking both troubled and serious for once. Shinra Tensei. Another bright light blinded everyone in the village temporarily before the true terror of the jutsu came. Mito actually looked in awe for once as she looked at what Naruto had done. Currently she was on the same cliff that Obito and Zetsu had been, with Obito standing next to her. Amazing, she said, so this is the power of the Rinnegan. And that's not all of it, replied Obito as he watched as well. Mito glanced at him. Just what are you doing here, anyways? Obito shrugged. I was nearby and heard the commotion, so I figured I would stop by and say hello. Mito sighed before she started to walk away, Obito following her. Let's go. It's time for me to be filled in as to who is involved and just what Naruto is planning. Wow. Fuka was speechless, again. That had been happening a lot in the past few hours. Kushina, who still had an unconscious Fu on her back, was also in the same state. But no one could blame them at the moment. Naruto appeared behind them in an orange spark. We need to go, he said simply as his chakra cloak disappeared. Both Kushina and Fuka simply nodded. Naruto then grabbed each by the one of their shoulders, and they disappeared in a dark flash as if they had never been there. So this is it? Asked Mikoto as she stood on top of a building next to the wreckage. Mikoto, Yujito, and B had recently arrived in Kumo to prepare Kumo's army. Mikoto was currently gazing at said army, and she had to admit that she was impressed. The wreckage nodded. Yes. I must say that you have prepared it fast, complimented Mikoto as she glanced at him momentarily before looking back at the army. The wreckage nodded again. We've been preparing for a while. All that is left are the final preparations which are being completed at the moment. Mikoto nodded, pleased. Good. What shall I do about that invitation to the Kage meeting that is being arranged by the Kazekage? Asked the wreckage. You're to accept it, of course, stated Mikoto simply. It shall be done then, responded the wreckage. Mikoto focused back on the army who was rushing to be prepared at the moment. And just with Kumo alone, the army was massive. Mikoto herself didn't know how many shinobi there were in total, but she was sure she would get that info later. But to think that even IWA, and maybe even Kiri, will join in. No wonder Yuzu fell, thought Mikoto to herself. And yet they still managed to kill about half of the strike force. Konoha won't be that lucky though. I can guarantee that for sure. How is she doing? Currently we find both Naruto and Mito in an old facility that Mito herself had used in the past. It was about 100 miles from Konoha, but of course Konoha wouldn't be pursuing them anytime soon. The others had simply gone to a nearby town to relax and buy supplies since there were none present, since no one knew of this place's existence besides Mito, so no one was present to restock on supplies. The sun was beginning to lower, signifying that another day was ending once more. Both Uzumaki's and the unconscious teen were in one of the many care rooms that were present in the facility. Mito sighed as the green aura around her hands disappeared and retracted her hands back from examining Fu. Extensive damage to her chakra coils, she began, but of course that isn't surprising. Too much of the Nanabi's chakra was pumped out at the same time. Her chakra coils couldn't handle it. Her body though, that's worse. Damage to skin, bones, and let's not even get started about the mental pain that she must have suffered through. Naruto frowned when he heard this. Mito glanced at her relative. Is she that important to you? She asked him. Naruto didn't respond for a few moments before nodding. In the time that I have known her, yes. Mito sighed. It is expected for there to be casualties, she replied slowly. If you can't dash. I know that, interrupted Naruto, I have known that this whole time. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to avoid that if I can help it. Mito sighed again before walking to one of the windows that was present in the room. She will be fine. It will take a while, but eventually she'll get better. But, she turned to look at Naruto, her face devoid of all emotions, if you can't take handling the fact that people will die in this, then you dash. I already told you that I knew that, interrupted Naruto once again. I don't know. Mito stared silently at the troubled teen. Finally she spoke, to feel like you do at the moment is to be human. It's comforting to know that you haven't completely lost yourself in doing this. But at the same time, be prepared to face the fact that you will lose loved ones. That's the fact in life. Naruto didn't respond. He merely sighed before walking out the room. Damn it to hell. Kabuto sighed as he watched Tsunade rage from within the tent that was supposed to be acting as the temporary Hokage building. Everywhere around the crater that was now Konoha, tents were the temporary home for all survivors until construction began, which was still scheduled to start tomorrow. "You're frustrated," began Kabuto calmly, totally the opposite of how Tsunade felt, "but you can't let that frustration consume you. There's an important event that's coming up, if you haven't forgotten." Tsunade scowled as she tried to calm herself. Once she felt that she had, she folded her arms on her desk. "Right now we are in no position for what's to come. You should just feel lucky that Naruto didn't finish this like he could have," retorted Kabuto. "And that's what's bugging me," exclaimed Tsunade, frustration starting to show once more. "He could have taken his revenge right then and there, so why didn't he?" "Good question," agreed Kabuto, "but you shouldn't question it." "And why the hell not?" asked Tsunade. Kabuto shrugged. "Just be glad that it happened. No use in dwelling on it. Unless you really want it to happen." "I see your point," muttered Tsunade. "Good," said Kabuto. "Now, we have 3 days until the Kage meeting is to take place. We should use this time to prepare and rest as much as possible. The real action hasn't even started yet." Tsunade sighed. "I know, and that's the worst part about this. Things haven't even begun yet, and look at where we are now. Things aren't over yet. We still have a chance to win. We just have to play our cards right," responded Kabuto as he readjusted his glasses. "I suppose so," said Tsunade with a chuckle before something came to her mind. Naruto was also wearing the Akatsuki uniform, recalled Tsunade. At this Kabuto merely shook his head. "For that, I have no idea as to why. It could be anything. But the thing that matters the most right now is the Kage meeting." Tsunade then chuckled again. "Never thought that I would be in this position, having to team up with you." Kabuto smirked. "Same here." But then the smirking disappeared. "And what of Danzo?" Tsunade scowled at the name. "The bastard disappeared, but something tells me that we haven't seen the last of him yet." "We should be prepared for anything in 3 days then," stated Kabuto. Tsunade nodded her head. "Yes, we should. Do you think that I made the right choice?" "I don't know, brat. But I didn't know that you cared for this girl this much." "Yeah, neither did I." "Well, you should simply dash." Naruto raised an eyebrow when he couldn't hear Kurama speak anymore. He then noticed that he was no longer outside on the rooftop of the facility. Instead, it was the same position that he had found himself last time, except instead of all black, it was all white now. "What the hell is this now?" thought Naruto before he heard a voice. "Uzumaki Naruto, it seems you're not the big bad villain that you're trying to portray yourself as." Naruto narrowed his eyes as he looked around, trying to find the source of the voice. It sounded familiar, but where had he heard it before? "I don't know what you're talking about," responded Naruto, still looking around. "I never said I was a villain." Then what are you?" Naruto shrugged at this. "I don't know, and I simply don't care." "Want to classify me as the vengeful hero avenging his clan? Go ahead. Want to classify me as the villain taking revenge for what Konoha did to me? Go ahead. Something as trivial as that does not concern me." Interesting response, but why didn't you finish what you had started? Why did you leave? Was it because of the girl? Naruto sighed. "I'm not going to lie. Yes, Fu was one of the main reasons. But I wasn't going to crush Konoha then, or at least I don't think I was. The excitement might have clouded my judgment." "Why? Why didn't you finish it there?" Naruto smirked as he looked around. "So you don't know everything apparently. Whoever or whatever you are. But the answer to that is simply I don't want to take any chances. I don't want to leave a single survivor from Konoha alive. Yes, I can destroy the building part of the village by myself as I just did. But not the villagers themselves. They will simply rebuild the village. But with the force that I'm building, there are no chances of escape. But the most important factor is irony. Irony? Kumo, Iwa, Kiri, the forces that destroyed the Uzumaki clan. They are the very same forces that will take down Konoha as well. So yes, it is ironic. And that's the best part in all of this. To use the same force that wiped my clan to destroy Konoha, it's just too hilarious to pass up. I see. You are truly different from before, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto scowled as he began to look around again. I've already answered your question, now answer mine. And what will that be? Who the fuck are you? Yes, I suppose you would be wondering about that. Naruto's eyes widened as he recalled where he had heard the voice before, the dream he had had. You're the same person who told me how I had lost my path, aren't you? So do you remember that? Yes, it was me. Well, said Naruto impatiently. Are you going to tell who you are, or not? The being was silent for a few moments, before replying. I suppose it's only appropriate for you to know, isn't it? You got that right, responded Naruto. Very well then. I have been known by many names throughout the whole time I was alive. But the one you would most know me by is... Naruto's eyes widened as a figure finally became visible in front of him. Said figure was wearing a cloak with a high collar, except that it didn't cover his face and it revealed 6 Magatama, the same ones that he himself possesses when using Kurama Chakra. The man's hair had 2 distinct horn-like pieces of hair sticking out in the front and carried a shakujo, a ringed staff, on his right hand. But the most shocking part was the man's eyes. He possessed the Rinnegan. You may call me the Rikudo Sennin. Silence. Within, wherever the hell Naruto was at the moment, there was only silence. It was unsettling, to be honest. But it wasn't like that because of the silence, although the silence did add an even more tense atmosphere than what it already was at the moment to begin with. Naruto could only stare at the man in front of him that had just proclaimed himself to be the Rikudo Sennin. Unbelievable? Perhaps, but considering everything that Naruto had seen up to now, it didn't seem that laughable to think that this was in fact the actual and the only Rikudo Sennin. It would explain a lot of things in reality, but this also raised many other questions. The self-proclaimed, or for the moment at least, Rikudo Sennin sighed as he could very well know what his young descendant was thinking at the moment. And he couldn't really blame him. But at the same time, it was a truth that he would have to deal with. Should we continue where we left off? He asked calmly. Naruto shook his head to try to clear his mind and come to terms as to what was happening at the moment. Just, what is this? That was the only thing that Naruto wanted to know at the moment. Just why was this happening? What was the purpose of all of this? The Sennin hummed quietly at that. I suppose that is the heart of everything in this. Naruto frowned, already noticing that he was dodging the question, something that everyone that seemed to know something about the answer to that question did. You're not answering my question, stated Naruto. I suppose I'm not, agreed the Sennin, but have you already forgotten what Uzumaki Mito said to you? No, you haven't. It all comes down to frustration, doesn't it? The fact that everyone else seems to know the answer about something that concerns you, but you yourself don't know it. Naruto didn't respond, but that said more than words could. The Sennin had hit dead on in his observation. Yes, he was frustrated. But who wouldn't? It obviously dealt with him, so he had every right to know, but everyone else seemed to think otherwise. Bastards. But is it really that important to you? Continued the Sennin. I would have thought that you would simply not care and just simply continue on your path. It's not as easy as that, replied Naruto, especially when it all sounds like I'm simply some puppet for someone out there. I've had it with being used and being kept in the dark about things. Now that I have all this power, things are different. I will never be someone's tool for his grand scheme. The Sennin chuckled. It's not as simple as that, young Uzumaki. Me and you, we're both simply human at the end. We do have a power that no one else has, but at the end of things, we are both simply men. I don't like the sound of this so far, thought Naruto as he stared at the Sennin. So if you're not behind all of this, then who is? Naruto scowled as the Sennin hummed once again. He was beginning to see that he did that when he wasn't going to answer something. You're not going to tell me, are you? Asked Naruto, but said it like a statement. The Sennin shrugged. I never said that. You simply jumped to conclusions, based on the fact that no one just gives me a simple answer, retorted Naruto. Is it hard to just simply say it? That saves so much trouble. True, but there's no profit to be gained in something that you received without earning it first, responded Sennin, saying basically the same thing that Mito had said before. But there is a reason why I have called you here instead of talking about pointless matters, said Sennin. Pointless matters, thought Naruto. Well, what is it then? He asked out loud. The Rikudo Sennin turned around and began to walk, motioning for Naruto to do the same. Said blonde began to follow, seeing no other alternative at the moment. Both Rinnegan wielders walked for a few minutes, before the Sennin spoke. Do you know the history of your clan? He asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow in response, silently asking what he meant. Do you know where your clan originated from? He asked again, restating his question. I know for a fact that we're related to the Senju, began Naruto, and that the Uzumaki split from the Senju because they were tired of all the fighting between the Senju and the Uchiha. But beyond that, no, I do not, he finished. The Sennin nodded. I see. Well, all that information is correct. But the most important part of all of that is as to why the fighting between the Senju and the Uchiha has occurred. I see. Muttered Naruto. Something tells me that you have something to do with that, stated Naruto as he glanced at the Sennin. The Sennin in turn sighed. Yes. I am in part responsible for all the bloodshed that has occurred within my descendants. Descendants, repeated Naruto quietly before it hit him. So you mean that the Uchiha and Senju are related because they share one common ancestor? The Sennin nodded again. Yes. And by definition, so are you related to them and are my descendants as well. That's the reason why you are capable of possessing the Rinnegan as well as handle the chakra of that of a bijou with ease. So Konoha was basically the home of the descendants of the legendary Rikudo Sennin, huh? Or was the home, save for that of one Senju member? How did this all begin? Asked Naruto. It was by my own mistake and weakness, answered Sennin. He then continued. I had 2 sons. The older one was born with my eyes and my spiritual energy while the younger was born with my body and physical energy. Senju and the Uchiha, thought Naruto, understanding immediately. It was obvious that the oldest son was the first Uchiha or whatever they called themselves back then. And the Senju obviously originated from the younger son and the Uzumaki as well. The older of my sons had been alive while the Jubi had been freed and war was still present like a normal occurrence. This caused him to believe that power would be the only way to secure peace. My younger son did not experience any of this, however, so he grew up kind of naive, even I have to admit to that. He believed that love was the way to secure peace. Of course, my time to pass on to the afterlife grew near, and I had to choose who would become my successor. And that's where all of this began. Whoever you didn't choose felt bitter about it and tried to take the other one out, am I correct? Guessed Naruto. The Sennin turned to Naruto with a surprised look on his face which brought a great deal of satisfaction upon Naruto. Hey, he just surprised Rikudo Sennin. That earned him a pat on the back. Yes, confirmed Sennin, his face becoming normal, although it wasn't entirely my decision. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. What do you mean? Asked Naruto. Tell me, which would you say is a much better path to peace, love or power? Asked the Sennin back. Naruto frowned at that. Peace wasn't something that concerned him at all. But still, if he would choose one, which would it be? The Sennin merely gazed at Naruto silently as he pondered the question, wanting to hear his answer. You know, began Naruto, you probably already know this, but peace is not something that I'm concerned with. The Sennin didn't reply to that. Why? We'll save that for later. But if I were to choose one, I wouldn't. I would choose both. Sennin stopped walking when he heard that. Oh, he said as he turned towards Naruto. And why would you do that? Naruto shrugged. Because in this scenario, one needs the other to work. Yes, having love is good and all, but if you don't have power to back it up, no one will listen to you. The same if you simply have power. People would fear you and try to take you out, which would simply destroy any chance for peace. But if both coexist and find a middle ground, then yes, it is possible. Yes, thought the Sennin, please, he is my. You're right, stated the Sennin and began to walk again, Naruto following him again as well. That was my plan as well. To name them both my successors and have them share the responsibility. But of course, there was one factor that I had not thought about. Jubi, stated Naruto. The Sennin nodded again, not showing surprise this time. Yes. I don't know how it did it, but it somehow gained consciousness after I sealed it within me. What do you mean, gained consciousness? Asked Naruto. Originally the Jubi was simply a beast with immense power. It had no consciousness, no thoughts, nothing whatsoever. It just was. But after I became a Jinchuriki, I started to learn how to think. To plan things and to not be a simple beast. Naruto stayed silent, listening intently. I suppose it somehow learned to tap into mind, continued Sennin, but the point is that with its newfound knowledge, it planned a way for it to be free someday. It seemed that it knew that I was planning on separating it into pieces. I, of course, did it. But, it left some of its power inside me. I don't know how it managed to do that, but it did. And with that little power it managed to influence me into choosing my younger son as my successor. By the time I knew of it, it was simply too late. Then my older son challenged his brother and their descendants continued, and so on. Until the history that you know today has happened. Silence followed once more as they continued to walk. Naruto processed everything that he had learned. So the Jubi, the same beast that he had sealed within himself, was behind the bloodiest rivalry in the history of the shinobi world. Naruto's eyes widened. So I did it, the Sennin nodded. Yes. By that one action, everything else became possible. Naruto scowled. So this was someone's or something's plan after all. All of this dash. Of course, that's only part of the scenario, said Sennin. What do you mean? Asked Naruto. The Jubi does not decide fate. Yes, it is back. But that's only because of the path you have chosen. If you hadn't chosen this, someone else would have simply revived it. Toby, thought Naruto, remembering what his plan had been. So then the rivalry itself is its plan. It was betting on the hatred that it brought along and the temptation to use its power, realized Naruto. Now you're getting it, said Sennin. Naruto chuckled. That's one tricky beast. Yes it is. But this brings us to the last part of this discussion, said Sennin and stopped walking. Naruto stopped next to him. The Sennin merely turned to look at Naruto directly in the eyes. Uzumaki Naruto, you are now my true successor. We finally made it. Muttered Suigetsu as the group consisting of himself, Sasuke, Rashi, Karen, and Han reached IWA. Of course they were currently being escorted by IWA shinobi, but at least they were there. Suigetsu glanced at Karen to see her still embarrassed look that she wore for the past day. So she finally did Sasuke, something that she had wanted since she first met the said shinobi. Why should she be embarrassed? Oh yeah, maybe because he saw her breasts. Suigetsu then glanced at Sasuke who was walking in the front of the group. Now as to why Sasuke actually had sex with Karen when he didn't seem to have any interest in said girl. Well, Suigetsu was still trying to figure that one out. As the main office building to where the office of the Tsuchikage was located came closer and closer, Suigetsu held back a grimace. He was never a big fan of IWA. Hell, anyone from Kiri would agree with him, and the feeling was vice versa. IWA and Kiri had a long history of bloodshed between them. His only consolation was the fact that the current Tsuchikage didn't know he was being screwed over. Now that brought a smirk on Suigetsu's face. Yes, I can't wait to see the look on that old fart's face when he realizes that he's the fool here. Kiri, muttered Utakata as he, Hataru, and Yagura passed the sign that said "Welcome to Kiri." Not very welcomed-like, thought Hataru with a sweat drop as she looked at the heavy mist. This place hasn't changed one bit, commented Yagura as they continued to walk. So this is where you're from, sensei? Asked Hataru as she looked at Utakata, who sighed. Unfortunately, he answered. Hataru frowned when she heard this. She of course didn't know a thing about Utakata's past since he refused to say a single thing about it. But what could be so bad as for him to hate his birthplace? If only she knew that he wasn't the worst one, if only. Both Utakata and Yagura stopped walking, which in turn made Hataru stop as well, except with a confused look on her face. But then it became clear to her as to why they had stopped when Umbu members surrounded them. Defenses haven't changed, noted Yagura, so they still use the mist as a way to detect any possible intruders. Yagura, said a clearly female voice. The two Jinchuriki and blonde girls turned to look forward as a beautiful auburn-haired woman wearing a blue dress that reached just below her knees, a mesh armor underneath, and a blue skirt appeared within in the mist. Yagura smirked as he looked at the woman, recognizing her. So you became the Godame Mizukage, Mei. Terumi Mei, who was followed by two more Umbu behind her, frowned as she recognized Yagura as well. She had been one of the shinobi that had helped in finally taking Yagura down after all. You're supposed to be dead, she stated. And why are you wearing the uniform of the Akatsuki? Yagura sighed. It's a long story. But trust me when I say that I am no longer being controlled. The man who was responsible for that is dead already. Mei merely kept the frown on her face and glanced at both Utakata and Hataru. Her one visible eye that was not covered by her long auburn hair narrowed as she recognized Utakata. You're... Utakata merely nodded. As I said, began Yagura, making Mei face him again, it's a long story. I suggest we get to the village before explaining. Mei kept an impassive look before nodding. All right. But no tricks or I'll kill you, again. Yagura chuckled as he stepped forward, both Utakata and Hataru following. I'm not that stupid, you know. With that, they made their way towards Kiri. Danzo couldn't help but to let out the annoyed look that was currently present on his face. It shouldn't be surprising as to why exactly he was annoyed at the moment. To think I've lost the Nanabi now, he thought bitterly. Uzumaki Naruto, you're proven to be even more of a nuisance than I anticipated. But still, for you to manage to control the power of the Kyuubi to the degree that you have, and you possess the Rinnegan as well. TCH, damn it. If only Tsunade hadn't gotten in the way, things could have been so much easier, but I must not deny the fact that the boy is beyond my level now. So, how to control him? Danzo-sama. Danzo turned to look at one of his most trusted and strongest members in his root division, Fu. What is it? Shall we make camp here, Danzo-sama? Danzo merely looked up at the sky to see that it was indeed dark already, and it was going to get darker still. He looked around the area and noticed that it was decent enough for a camp. They had also traveled a good enough distance from Konoha, well for the moment at least. Yes, answered Danzo. Fu nodded and began to order the rest of the members to start getting ready to set up camp for the night. He had traveled a good enough distance for the day, rationalizing Danzo. After all, he had 3 days before the Kage meeting in the Land of Iron. And when the meeting came, he would make sure to show that he was the appropriate leader for Konoha. Hell, the appropriate leader for all the shinobi villages. Are you sure we should be meeting like this? Enko shook her head as she looked around. No, I'm not. But this is the best time right now. Niji sighed as he leaned back on a tree. I take it you're also wondering as to what we do now, right? Enko nodded. Yeah. Since Danzo is out of the village, or what's left of it, and the fact that it should be obvious to Tsunade that Fu really is on Naruto's side, what the hell are we supposed to do now? I say we wait, stated Niji. When the time comes, Naruto will contact us. We were told to stay low after the initial preparations, remember? I know that, snapped Enko, but with Fu gone the plan has changed. Hell, I don't know if there is a plan for us now. Keep quiet, ordered Niji, but like I said, we were told to stay low. And that's what we should do. Enko sighed. Yeah, I guess you're right about that. It would be bad if we did something that jeopardized the Gaki's dash. Enko stopped abruptly and threw a kunai into a nearby bush. What was that for? Said Niji. Enko narrowed her eyes as she began to walk towards the bush. I thought I heard something. Just as she was about to reach it, sounds of footsteps nearby alerted them both. A patrol, stated Niji, we need to get out of here, now. Enko nodded and the two headed back towards their respective tents that were their temporary homes, both quickly and quietly. After a few minutes of silence, one Hyuga Hinata stepped out of the bush that Enko had thrown the kunai to, a shocked look on her face. Naruto-kun. You have got to be kidding me. Sennin shook his head. I kid you not. Naruto could only stare at the creator of the shinobi world, flabbergasted. And just what do you mean by your successor? It is what it says, he replied, you are now my true chosen successor. Both of my sons lacked something needed in order for me to simply choose one of them, and not both of them. And you have shown that you have what is required. I already told you, began Naruto, I'm not interested in peace. The Sennin chuckled. That may be true, but you forget that peace can be created through many different methods. That caused Naruto to remember Nagato. Yes, the man was slightly delusional at thinking that he was a god, but the fact of the matter was that he was also trying to bring peace, although he was simply being used for Tobi's purpose. And there was Tobi as well. Another delusional person, except he was even more delusional than Nagato. Trying to create a dream world to just simply bring back one girl? Naruto could understand the fact that Tobi would feel bad at losing the girl that he loved, but to simply go to that extent? Naruto wasn't trying to be hypocritical either. He knew what he himself was planning, but he wasn't going to destroy the whole world for what Konoha did. Or at least, not every single person. There were still places like Kumo and Iwa. I see you understand what I'm trying to say, continued Sennin. This whole chain of hatred that was brought about by choosing my younger son was Jubi's backup plan. It knew that someone, somehow, would revive it. It didn't care who it was, just that it happened. Then why hasn't it tried to get out from me yet? Asked Naruto. Because you're actually interested in what you're doing, answered Sennin. Also as to who you are. Successor, thought Naruto. Sennin then placed his left hand on Naruto's right shoulder. I hereby officially declare you as my successor, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto then felt a sudden rush of power and everything went blank. The last thing he heard was, you are now the Nidaime Rikudo Sennin. Within one of Orochimaru's old underground laboratories, Kabuto was currently smirking as two recently woken up tied-up Iwa shinobi cowered in front of him. Literally. Just what do you want from us? Asked one of them. Kabuto merely smeared some blood on a scroll and brought his hands up and started to form hand seals. From you? It's simple. All that it is required from you two are to be sacrificed, nothing more. The other Iwa shinobi finally noticed the seal designs that were around him and his partner. What is this? That was the last thought that he had, as he and the other shinobi were covered by both dust and ash. Once the procedure was done and both IWA shinobi were completely covered by the dust and ash, Kabuto merely smirked and began to laugh as he gazed at the now two revived shinobi in front of him. Yes, with these two, not even Naruto-kun will stop me. When Naruto opened his eyes, he came face to face with his mother's wide-eyed ones. "Where am I?" "You're inside a bedroom in the house owned by Mito-sama," answered Kushina slowly, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Naruto stood up from her lap and from the king-sized bed as well to stretch. "What happened?" asked Kushina. Naruto paused. "What do you mean?" "When we came back from getting supplies in the nearby village, we found you passed out on the roof, and now this," answered Kushina. Naruto frowned. Yes, he could understand the passed out part. It had happened when he had talked to Jubi as well, but what did she mean by this? Naruto then noticed his reflection on the mirror in front of him and he couldn't recognize the person that stared back. Gone was his blonde hair. Now he had silver hair with the same two horn-shaped pieces of hair sticking out just like the Sennin. His whiskers had not disappeared thankfully, but now he had bluish-greenish eyes. What the hell? That was the only thing that Naruto could think at the moment. "Naruto-kun," Kushina said slowly, as if testing the name out. Naruto for his part was touching both of his horns, trying to see if they were real. And they were. Just what the hell did he do to me, thought Naruto, frustrated. "Naruto-kun, just what happened?" Naruto sighed and faced his worried mother. "I don't know in what other way or form to say this, so I'll simply say it. Apparently I am now the successor of the Rikudo Sennin." Silence. "What?" Chuckling from the doorway made the two Uzumaki turn to it to see a chuckling Mito who was still in her very elaborate kimono. "So it has happened already, huh?" "You knew?" asked Naruto. Mito nodded. "Yes, I did. I didn't think it was going to happen this soon though, but it's still a welcome outcome, wouldn't you agree?" Naruto pointed to his face. "Just what has happened to me?" "Shouldn't it be obvious?" replied Mito, only to notice that Naruto's posture had not changed. "Too shocked to think right now, is he? But I can't blame him. Your DNA has mixed with that of the Sennin, and the end result is, well, your new look. So that's what he did to me," realized Naruto, "and that's why I felt a rush of power as well." Mito then walked up to the closet on the other side of the room from the door. As Mito opened it up, both Naruto and Kushina saw a grayish-blackish armor hanging. "This will be your new uniform," declared Mito with a smirk. Naruto walked up next to Mito and proceeded to take out his new armor and examine it. He had to say it, he liked it. Ah, yes, outfits from the past, huh? I have to say that I liked the style better back then. "You there now, you fox?" "Yeah, here I am, unfortunately." "And I hear that you just had a talk with the old man?" "I did." "And what did he say?" "Later, not now." "I like it," stated Naruto. Mito nodded and then began to walk out. "Get some rest then." Kushina saw the door close and then turned to see her altered son still examining the armor. "So it's true then, the Rikudo Sennin." Naruto merely nodded. "Yes. He said so himself." Kushina looked at her son curiously. "And? What will you do now that you have this?" "The plan," answered Naruto simply. He then recalled what the Rikudo Sennin had told him: peace can be created through many different methods. Naruto frowned as he recalled that. Just what does he expect me to do now? Mito walked slowly to her room, eyes closed, and her mind actually at peace at the moment. "So, did it happen?" Mito cracked one eye open and spotted Obito leaning on one of the walls of the hallway. "Yes, it has." Obito nodded and chuckled. "To think that that brat." "How do you know of this?" asked Mito with a raised eyebrow. "Shouldn't it be obvious?" responded Obito. "Madara told me." Mito looked at one of the last surviving Uchiha with unrestrained curiosity. Just what exactly did Madara tell you about all of this? All of it, answered Obito as he began to walk away. I've known all along just what exactly that guy is meant to do. Of course, I haven't started to believe it till recently. Mito merely stared at Obito's retreating back. Sasuke stared impassively at the very short man in front of him at the moment. If he were honest with himself, this was one of the last places that Sasuke wanted to be at the moment. IWA, not one of his most favorite villages. Not that he had much experience with other shinobi villages to begin with. Besides Oto and Konoha, there wasn't any other village that he had much experience with or that he had been to or pretty much knew anything about. Well, there was Suna, but that was simply because of the invasion they had attempted to pull off almost 3 years ago. Not that he cared much about other shinobi villages to begin with either. No, Sasuke would very much like to be in Konoha, pretty much destroying the place. No, destroy wasn't the right word. More like erase. Yes, erase Konoha to the point where no one would ever remember it afterwards. Destroy every single building and kill every single person residing within, both shinobi and civilians. Especially the civilians. They were pretty much the worst of the two in Sasuke's opinion. They were just simply arrogant, but the worst part was that they were arrogant and for no freaking reason. They were all weak, ignorant fools that were simply lucky enough to be born in a prosperous village such as Konoha. Some of the shinobi were arrogant, but they at least had some power-ish. That didn't mean that he was going to spare them, of course. So, began Inoki, making Sasuke come out of his train of thoughts, you're here a lot sooner than I thought. It hasn't even been a week yet. That was true. Things were going a lot faster than Sasuke thought they would, not that he didn't mind. With all the complicated plans that Naruto made, Sasuke would have thought that they would take longer than it was so far, but it didn't seem that way so far. I wonder, just how long will it be before this is all over, thought Sasuke to himself. You're right, responded Sasuke, but I thought you would be pleased to know that it is proceeding fast. Inoki shrugged. I didn't say that I wasn't, but it's still surprising. Sasuke didn't respond to that. Or more like, he didn't really care enough to. He knew what would become of this place afterwards anyways, so there wasn't much reason to care about it in the first place. So, continued Inoki, seeing that Sasuke wasn't going to respond anytime soon, where is that woman? Sasuke raised an eyebrow at that. Could the old man in front of him be sexually interested in his mother as well? He already knew Suigetsu was, but he didn't really care too much about that. He knew his mother would never become interested in the swordsman. Said swordsman standing behind Sasuke suddenly felt a sudden wave of disappointment come upon the pit of his stomach. Why? He wasn't sure. Sasuke then thought of his blonde knucklehead teammate, or past knucklehead. Something was going on between Naruto and his mother. That much he was sure. Sasuke wasn't stupid. He would admit that he wasn't the smartest one when it came to women, but he knew a few things. Now as to what exactly was going on. Sasuke wasn't sure. Did he care? Now that was much more complicated. But Sasuke knew for a fact that even if he tried to stop whatever was going on, it wouldn't end well for him. His mother was scared and had the power to back it up. He knew that for a fact. She's busy with other matters, responded Sasuke simply with a monotone that resembled that of his older brother. Inoki's eyebrows twitched. He's not much of a talker, all right, thought Inoki. But what's important is for you to ready your army as soon as possible, continued Sasuke. Inoki snorted at that. I will be ready, that I assure you. But are you sure that Kumo and Kiri will do the same? Especially Kiri. That village is not what it used to be, after all. You don't have to worry about that, retorted Sasuke, just worry about you pulling your own weight. This brat, thought a seething Inoki. How dare he think that he can order me around like I'm one of his underlings? Sasuke mentally smirked. He could tell that Inoki did not like being treated like being ordered around. People from his generation must be like that, Sasuke realized. But as to why, well, that's another thing that Sasuke just simply didn't give a fuck about. Also, these two will stay here to monitor your progress, said Sasuke as he looked back towards both Rashi and Han. Said IWA shinobis both stepped forward with an emotionless look on both of their faces. Well, Rashi's was, but no one can tell if Han's was because his face was covered up. Inoki's annoyance died down and his excitement grew as both Jinchuriki stepped forward. The same giddy feeling that he had when he had seen both Rashi and Han step into his office returned, and why shouldn't he feel giddy? He had both his Jinchuriki back and their respective bijus as well. IWA was once again at full power. Teaming up with the Uchihas didn't seem to be that bad, except putting up with their arrogance. But that was a small price to pay in Inoki's opinion. Although there was one thing that was bothering Inoki since Sasuke and the rest had stepped into his office. And what was that? It was simple, they were all wearing the Akatsuki uniform. So that raised an interesting question: what the hell happened? If you don't mind me asking, began Inoki, deciding to question what was bothering him, just why exactly are you all wearing the uniform of the Akatsuki? Karen readjusted her glasses in the background. About time he asked that, she thought to herself. She was feeling a lot less embarrassed about what had happened 2 nights ago. She was still confused about it. And why shouldn't she be? Sasuke never showed any real interest in her before, even though she knew that. So for him to do what he did all of a sudden. A blush appeared on her face full force. This wasn't the time to be thinking about such things, damn it. Less than be embarrassed at the moment. That's simple, said Sasuke, Akatsuki is gone. What do you mean gone? Questioned Inoki. Sasuke sighed. Exactly as it says. It's no more. All of its members are now killed. Even Itachi. As to why we're wearing the uniform, well, that's irrelevant. Inoki scowled mentally, but something good did happen apparently. Now that's good news, thought Inoki. That bloody organization is finally gone. You're also not to do anything about AIM, stated Sasuke, continuing the conversation, wanting to finish it as soon as possible. Oh, said Inoki with a raised eyebrow. And why should I? Remembering what Mikoto had told him, Sasuke responded simply, if you do, then the deal we have about us joining your village is done for. Inoki frowned at that. Yes, that would be a wasted opportunity. Was AIM worth it? Or not? No matter, thought Inoki, when Konoha is gone, I'll simply make sure to take as much of its territory as soon as possible. But still, why would they care so much about AIM? Fine, finally answered Inoki, I won't attack AIM. For now at least. Sasuke nodded. Good. Sasuke then proceeded to walk out of the office, both Suigetsu and Karen, but stopped in front of the door. He glanced back at the old Tsuchikage. And one last thing, you're to accept that invitation to the Kage meeting sent by the Kazekage. So they know about that too, do they? Thought Inoki. But I shouldn't be surprised. Sasuke then continued to make his way out of Inoki's office, not waiting for a response, Suigetsu and Karen following. Inoki turned to look at both Rashi and Han, who had been silent throughout the whole conversation. Now, would you two mind explaining as to what exactly has happened? Both Rashi and Han scowled mentally. They both had no desire to have anything to do with the Sandaime Tsuchikage, but they realized that it was inevitable. Now, what to tell him, thought Rashi. I know exactly what you should say. Rashi couldn't help but to smirk mentally as the Yonbi began to explain to him as to what he should say. So we're finally getting out of here, right, Sasuke? Sasuke merely nodded to Suigetsu's question. The 3 former residents of Oto were currently making their way out of the village at a moderate pace. About a mile out of the village, a vibration within Sasuke's Akatsuki cloak stopped him in his tracks. Both Suigetsu and Karen stopped as well, confusion on their faces. "Oi, why did we stop?" asked Suigetsu. Sasuke didn't respond to him. He merely reached into his right pocket and pulled out some sort of disc, which was the source of the vibration. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "Now, what is this?" he asked himself. "Hello, Sasuke-chan." Sasuke's eyebrows twitched as he recognized the voice, even though he couldn't well make out who the person was that had suddenly appeared on the disc thingy. Suigetsu for his part fell into a laughing fit, while Karen was much more controlled, but a few giggles did escape. "Mom," said Sasuke, a little irritation in his voice. "What is this thing?" "Well, to simply simplify it, it's a communication device. But that's beside the point right now." "And just how did this thing get into my pocket in the first place?" asked Sasuke. Mikoto's hologram waved her hand. "Oh, that. I simply put it in your pocket before you left." "How the hell did she manage to do that?" wondered Sasuke, before shaking the question away. "Anyways, you will be happy to know that Tsuchikage has been informed on what he needs to do." "Good. It wouldn't do us any good if that fossil decided to act on his own. I take it that you also told him that he needs to be at the Kage meeting?" Sasuke nodded, remembering the last thing that she had told him before they had parted. "Yes, alright then. Now that that is out of the way, rendezvous with me in Kumo. Till then, Sasu-chan." Sasuke scowled as the image of his mother on the disc disappeared. She just had to give him pet names. He wasn't 8 anymore, damn it. "So, Sasu-chan, is it?" Sasuke really considered using Amaterasu on Suigetsu at that moment. Damn the consequences. In Kiri, things were going a lot differently at the moment. Fucking bitch. I swear, when I see her, I'm going to fuck her up. Yagura merely stared at his partner in amusement as he continued to rant about what he was going to do to Mei once he saw her again. Hataru was blushing in embarrassment at some of the words that her sensei was saying at the moment. The two Jinchuriki heiresses of the Tsuchigumo clan currently found themselves in a cell in one of the, if not the most, secured prison in Kiri. And that is the reason as to why we currently see a very pissed off Utakata. "This is exactly why I didn't want to return to this damned village," continued Utakata. Yagura sighed. "Look, I know you don't like this. Hell, I don't. But it's for security measures." Utakata scowled. "Like I care about what happens to this place." "I'm so glad you think so positively of us," said Mei sarcastically as she appeared outside the cell, followed by Umbu and some guy with a patch on his right eye. "Oi, let us go," exclaimed Utakata as he made his way to touch the bars. Before either Yagura or Hataru could warn him, Utakata was electrified as soon as he came within a foot close to the cell bars. "Forgot about that," thought Utakata bitterly as he stepped back. "Mei," began Yagura, more calmly unlike Utakata, making said woman turn to look at him, "I understand as to why you're doing this, but let me tell you that this is really pointless." And he wasn't talking about just the bars. He and Utakata already knew about the seals that prevented them from using both their normal chakra and that of their bijus. Mei placed her right hand on her hips. "I'll be the judge of that," she retorted. "After all, you two aren't the most well-trusted people in Kiri." She then directed her gaze towards Hataru. "As for her, well, I don't really know who she is, but she's apparently allied with you, so that makes her untrustworthy as well." "I'm not untrustworthy," thought Hataru, but decided not to voice it. She could tell that this Mei woman was strong. She was a Kage, so she wouldn't stand a chance against the auburn-haired woman. "So?" asked Yagura, bringing Mei's attention back to him. "Just how exactly do you want us to prove to you that we are not being controlled by anyone?" Mei merely tilted her head towards the direction of the only Unumbu person that was behind her. "Ao," she said simply. The man with an eye patch on his right eye, now identified as Ao, nodded his head. "Byakugan." Both Yagura's and Utakata's eyes widened partially when they saw what they assumed to be the bloodline from the Hyuga clan from Konoha. "So he was the one who undid my genjutsu," thought Yagura, now remembering the man. The Byakugan, thought Utakata. How in bloody hells does Kiri possess that? Hataru for her part didn't recognize the Byakugan, so she didn't make too much of a fuss about it. She was, however, a bit disgusted as the veins appeared around Ao's right eye. I see, muttered Yagura, understanding what Mei was doing. This was how she freed us last time, before she killed you, of course. Yagura chuckled mentally at the reminder. Of course, it hadn't been just Mei that brought him down. It was the whole rebellion combined. She did, however, deliver the last blow. Not that he didn't mind. It wasn't like he had wanted to live. Not after all that he had done. After a minute or so, Ao deactivated his Byakugan and turned towards an expecting Mei. They're clear, Mizuki-sama. Although. What? Asked Mei, slightly irritated. Ao leaned in to whisper to Mei. There's something on that girl's back. It's some sort of jutsu that's implanted into her, although I've never seen anything like it, whispered Ao. I see, muttered Mei, before facing the two Jinchuriki and the blonde girl. It seems that none of you are placed under genjutsu or something of the sort. Told you, muttered Utakata, making Mei's eyebrows twitch in slight annoyance. But you, continued Mei, pointing at Hataru, what exactly is it that you have on your back? Hataru's face turned into a mixture of both surprise and fear at that. How did she find out? Thought Hataru, alarmed. Is it because of whatever that guy did? Answer me, stated Mei coldly, making Hataru flinch. So this girl is hiding something, thought Yagura. He then glanced at an impassive-looking Utakata. I wonder if he knows what it is. It's a kenjutsu, answered Hataru softly, seeing no other alternatives than to just simply tell the truth. A forbidden technique, thought Mei incredulously. How does this girl? And here I thought she was just simply an ordinary girl, thought Yagura. Isabu snorted at that within Yagura's mind. Anyone involved with a Jinchuriki is far from normal. I thought you would know that by now. Yeah, guess I forgot. Utakata remained silent, the same impassive look on his face. Tell me, girl, began Mei, the same cold tone in her voice, just how exactly do you have a kenjutsu in your possession? It's from my clan, began Hataru, the Tsuchigumo clan. Realization hit Mei. She had of course heard of the now nearly extinct clan. It had once been powerful during the Third Shinobi War because of the clan head developing a jutsu that could wipe an entire village. The clan also formed a pact with Konoha through the Sandaime Hokage. In return for protection, the clan head declared the technique to be forbidden. After all, the Sandaime didn't want for a jutsu like that to be used against Konoha. As Hataru continued, Mei raised an arm, making Hataru stop. There's no need for you to continue. I am already aware of what that jutsu is. Hataru merely nodded at that. The Tsuchigumo clan, huh, thought Yagura. He had also heard of the clan during his time as the Mizukage, but he had never bothered with the clan. Now this is interesting, thought Mei to herself. A member from that clan, to be here of all places, bah, it matters not. There's more important matters at the moment. Let them out, ordered Mei to someone. Yagura stepped out of the cell once the seals were turned off. He glanced back to see if Utakata was going to follow, but he noticed that he wasn't. Instead, he was merely gazing at Hataru, who was looking down. Yagura simply sighed but headed towards the exit. What about them? Asked Mei, referring to both Utakata and Hataru. They have personal issues to work out. I'll fill you in with everything that's happening at the moment. Mei shrugged and followed Yagura. Before walking out, however, she turned towards Ao. Keep your eye on them, no pun intended. Ao's eyes twitched but nodded nonetheless. Yagura, followed by Mei and her Umbu escorts, walked through the exit and headed towards Mei's office. Back in the prison cell, Hataru was fidgeting nervously. Why didn't you tell me? Asked Utakata quietly. I don't know, answered Hataru softly. Utakata sighed. Then you wouldn't mind telling me everything? Hataru simply nodded and smiled. Outside of the cell, Eo rolled his eyes. Great, I get stuck babysitting the lovebirds, he thought to himself. Why, back in my day, one simply had sex with the person they liked. Now, you have all these talks. Kids. After having arrived at her office, May made herself comfortable on her office chair situated behind her desk. So, she began as she leaned back, just what exactly did you want to tell me? And how the hell are you even alive? Yagura himself was sitting on the guest chairs on the other side of May's desk. Well, as to how I'm alive part, let's just say that I was resurrected from the dead. May snorted in amusement at that. You actually expect me to believe that? Please, I'm not one of those girls that fantasizes about that kind of crap. Yagura chuckled at that. Believe me, I know. But what I'm telling you is the truth. Alright then, began May sarcastically, let's just say that I believe what you just told me. Who did this and how exactly did this happen? Uzumaki Naruto, answered Yagura. He's the one responsible for this. Uzumaki Naruto, repeated May. The Kyubi Jinchuriki? Yagura nodded. Yes, that one. From what I've gathered, he disappeared from his training trip with Jiraiya the Sennin and then returned to Konoha only to simply openly betray it. That's also right, agreed Yagura. Or at least I think so, he thought to himself. He hadn't brought me back at that time. So, began May, just how exactly did he do it then? He possesses the Rinnegan, stated Yagura simply. What? Exclaimed May as she stood up from her chair, losing her relaxed posture. How the hell is that possible? Yagura shrugged. I have no clue. He didn't tell us. Us? Repeated May as she sat back down but no longer in a relaxed position. What do you mean, us? He brought back all the Jinchuriki that had been killed, explained Yagura, making May's eyes widen. Just, how? Yagura sighed. I really don't know. I do know that it has something to do with that Rinnegan of his. Other than that though, I simply don't know. May herself sighed as she rubbed her forehead. Well, this is great. May then looked directly at Yagura. So I'm guessing that he sent you here. Yagura nodded. Yeah, that's right. What for? Asked May. To get you to agree to join him, answered Yagura. In what? Before Yagura could answer, much like with Sasuke, he felt a vibration within his right pocket of his Akatsuki cloak. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled a disc-shaped object. May was immediately on guard. What is that? Yagura chuckled at her defensiveness. Don't worry. I also have no clue as to what this is. That's my fault, I suppose. Both May and Yagura blinked in surprise as an image appeared on the disc. The image waved at May. Why, hello there. It really is nice to meet another woman who is a serious kunoichi. May raised an eyebrow. While I appreciate the compliment, who are you? The image chuckled. Where are my manners? My name is Uchiha Mikoto. A pleasure to meet you, Terumi May, Godane Mizukage. May's eyes widened as Mikoto introduced herself. Uchiha? But you were all wiped out, save for 2 members. Mikoto chuckled. Yes, I suppose that's what most people think, isn't it? But let me tell you that that is total bullshit. Things are way more complicated than you think. May frowned. Mind enlightening me? Mikoto sighed. Unfortunately, I do. That's something that I'm not willing to share with just anyone. All you need to know is that I am alive. May's frown remained on her face, but she could understand why Mikoto wouldn't just simply tell her. That didn't mean that she herself trusted Mikoto, though. So? What do you want? I'm sure you know how your village is viewed by the others, began Mikoto, as weak. Kiri has only survived thanks to your strong leadership, and I respect that. Yagura, who had been silent, flinched at being reminded of what he did. Well, it wasn't really him, but still. I'm amazed that the other villages haven't tried anything, continued Mikoto, but I suppose that's because they were trying to recover themselves from the previous war. But we both know that is not going to last forever. So I ask you, what if Kiri struck first? And just what exactly do you propose for me to do? Asked Mei. For you to join us, answered Mikoto. Currently both Kyumo and IWA are on our side to bring down Konoha. Now that surprised Mei greatly. For IWA and Kyumo to be working together, the last time that had happened was when? And why should I even consider this? Asked Mei, but she herself knew that was a stupid question. Mikoto's hologram scoffed. Shouldn't it be obvious? With Konoha out of the way, you receive much needed resources that Konoha possesses, as well as just simply removing a potential major threat out of the picture. Mei contemplated it for a few moments, but she knew that there wasn't much to contemplate on. Yes, Kiri was doing better than it had when Yagura was in control and the civil war was occurring. But it was still nowhere near as to where it had once been before the civil war. Who knew how long it would take for the village to get back to that state, if ever? And in the shinobi world, weakness meant destruction. Time just simply wasn't an ally, well. But there was one thing that was holding me back. An Uchiha had been the one responsible to set a genjutsu on Yagura to control him. Now as to who it was, Mei suspected that it couldn't have been anyone other than Uchiha Madara considering how powerful the genjutsu was. But that was a silly theory, right? I don't know if you're aware, began Mei, but one of you Uchiha was responsible for the civil war that took place in Kiri. Oh, I know, interrupted Mikoto, and you'll be glad to know that he's dead. I killed him myself. If you want proof, I can show you the body. If you fear that we were in on that, then you're terribly mistaken. That was simply a rogue Uchiha that is now dead. Surely Yagura would have told you. Mei glanced at said shinobi who simply shrugged as if to say, I told you so. Mei rolled her eyes before answering. I see, well I would most surely like to see the body of the person that caused Kiri so many problems. But as things stand right now. Yes, Kiri will join in this. Excellent. I assure you that you will not regret your decision. I will send for the body to be delivered to Kiri. And one final thing, that invitation for the Kage meeting that was sent to you by the Kazekage, well accept it. It is necessary. Mei simply nodded. She already had intentions of attending at any rate. Until we meet, Mei. Mikoto's hologram form disappeared. Yagura placed the disc interment back into his pocket in the Akatsuki cloak, wondering how the hell Mikoto had placed it there without him noticing in the first place. Now that was interesting, commented Mei. Yagura nodded. Yes it was, he agreed, but you made the right decision. We'll see, responded Mei. Now, one final thing, why in the blue hells are you wearing the Akatsuki uniform? Yagura merely shrugged. There was chaos within the temporary place for the council meeting in Konoha. It was currently being held in one of the few buildings that had been built the night before. Tsunade could only sigh in annoyance as the civilian council continued to suggest idiotic things in how to find and eliminate Naruto. Of course, this time they did have the right to be here, so there was nothing that she could do about that. But they certainly as hell didn't have the right to suggest how Naruto was to be killed. That was her job. Another thing that was irritating her to no end was her grandmother. She was alive, the fuck? Just how in the world was she still alive? And so young as well. We really shouldn't be bothering about such things, said Hayashi, silencing the civilians for the moment. While it is true that something needs to be done about Uzumaki Naruto, now it is the time for us to rebuild and reorganize our forces for us to be ready for the next time that he strikes, or if any other of our enemies decide to do so as well. Shikaku was merely silent. still not having completely recovered at the death of his two best friends. And to think that they were killed by one of his son's best friends who also killed his best friend. Now how many people can say that that has happened to them? He was also beating himself for making stupid mistakes. And now the Akimichi clan is nearly gone. Hayashi is right, said Tsunade, right now we have to focus on rebuilding the village. It wouldn't surprise me if any of the other villages are planning an attack. We need to be ready for that possibility, as well as the betrayal of Danzo and the Nanabai Jinchuriki, reminded Shibi. With the loss of them both, we have lost strong allies and resources. Tsunade scowled at the reminder of Danzo. I'm not sure he was on our side to begin with, she thought. And Fu, it seems that she really is with Naruto. Her hands turned into fists. And Naruto. We have to stop that brat, declared Tsum. Now is not the time for petty thoughts such as revenge, said Shibi. Tsum scowled at him. Don't get in my way, bug boy, she growled. Enough, said Tsunade as she brought her fists down on the table, making a crack. Now is not the time for us to fight with each other. We need to work together to overcome this. Is that clear? The other members, be it shinobi or civilians, fell silent at that. Tsunade herself calmed down. Alright, then let's proceed with the plans for the reconstruction of the village. Leaning on one of the walls, Kabuto smirked. She's inspirational alright, I'll give her that. He then proceeded to walk out of the building, a smirk on his face. Too bad that she's too trustful. So that's what happened. Kankuro could only stare in bewilderment as to what they had just learned. But how the heck is that possible? Gaara sighed. I wish I knew that. Well, I suppose that Akatsuki is no longer a problem then, commented Temari, but it seems that we may have a bigger one on the loose now. Gaara glanced at his older sister. We don't know that yet. Kankuro shook his head, a serious look on his face. Don't let your personal feelings interfere, Gaara. Naruto may well have become just like Sasuke and lost himself in the darkness. Remember that you're the Kazekage. Gaara sighed at that. I know that, Kankuro. But that doesn't mean that I should just simply jump into conclusions yet. He destroyed Konoha, as well as Akatsuki, and left AIM in chaos in the process, retorted Kankuro before grunting in pain thanks to Temari elbowing him. Temari sighed. I hate to admit it, Gaara, but Kankuro is right. For once. Kankuro scowled at that. Something tells me that it won't take long for him to be wanted internationally. Gaara stood up from his chair and walked towards the window before gazing at the village and the villagers that he swore to protect. Gaara, thought Temari sadly. She knew that this was tough on him. Naruto was practically his best friend. For him to be doing what he's doing, it was forcing Gaara to make a choice in whether or not he would join Naruto or be forced to bring him down. I suppose the Kage meeting is no longer needed, is it? Said Kankuro. Gaara shook his head. No, it will still take place. Only now, we will have a new topic to discuss. Temari nodded, agreeing. Yes, that is true. Naruto is becoming too dangerous to leave alone. Gaara continued to stare silently at the village below. What should I do? He wondered to himself. Never before did he think that he would ever have this problem, but fate seemed to prove him wrong. 2 days, I have 2 days left to decide on something. Are you sure about this? Yes, I am. It's the best way. Mito sighed as she processed everything that she had just been told. Currently we find her, Obito, both black and white Zetsu, and Mikoto in her holographic form in the now dubbed meeting room in one of Mito's old bases. Well, it was more of a safe house really, rather than a base. Well, I suppose there's no helping it then, said Mito. It won't cause too many problems. All we need to watch out for are both Suna and Konoha, said Mikoto. I wouldn't be so sure, responded Black Zetsu. And what is it then? Asked Mikoto. There's also a chance for the Land of Iron to get involved, answered his counterpart. It's full of samurai that will most likely try to help Suna and Konoha because of their moral code. Obito chuckled from his spot. That is true. Although I've never fought against a samurai before. I wonder if any of them can give me a good challenge. You're not turning into a masochist, are you? Asked Mikoto sarcastically. Obito chuckled and shrugged. Maybe. Most of them are weak, stated Black Zetsu, but there are a few, like the leader of the samurai, that can possibly give you an interesting fight. I see. That aside, began Mito, we need to prepare ourselves for this meeting then. That reminds me, where are Naruto and Kushina? Asked Mikoto. Asleep, answered Obito with a shrug. Well, maybe they are. You never know, he finished with a knowing smirk, making Mikoto sigh. I see, thought Mito. So are they really? Well then Obito, you know where you need to go now, said Mikoto. That caused said Uchiha to sigh. Yeah, I know. I have to deliver Tobi's body to the hot and sexy Mizukage. Good. These two are not your typical Uchiha alright, thought Mito to herself. Whether that was a good thing or not, well, it was still early to decide. In any case, that's everything for the moment. I'll keep you posted in case something else happens. Mito nodded as Mikoto's image disappeared. Also, where's that sexy redhead that you recruited? Asked Obito to Mito. Mito merely rolled her eyes. In her room as well. Too bad. I wanted to at least see her one more time. Oh well. Obito then disappeared in his usual vortex. Mito narrowed her eyes slightly on the spot to where Obito had been. That guy. Something tells me that he knows something that even I don't know. Damn you Madara, telling that person of all people everything, but leaving me out of the loop on some things. Just what exactly is your plan? She then glanced at Zetsu. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, let me save you the trouble of trying. I'm not going to tell you anything no matter what you do, stated Black Zetsu. Mikoto already tried, and she failed. White Zetsu chuckled. And I don't know anything, so even if I wanted to tell you, I can't. But that's a very big if. Mito sighed as Zetsu sunk on the ground. She had no idea what, it or whatever gender it was going to do. But it was still kind of confusing, both Madara and Hashirama combined as one, almost like their child in a way. Now that disturbing thought brought a shudder upon Mito. She knew Hashirama was not gay. Oh yeah, she could attest to that 100%. She shook her head as she made her way towards the medical room to check on Fu. Now was no time for perverted thoughts. She had more self-control than that. But that brought another thought to her mind. Were Naruto and Kushina involved together in a relationship beyond that of a mother and son? If they were, it didn't really change anything in Mito's opinion. Clans always practiced incest when necessary when faced with threat of extinction. And considering how messed up both of their lives have been so far, a weird relationship like that shouldn't be too surprising. Whatever, thought Mito, it does not concern me. Several hours later. You know, we've been lying in bed the whole day, Naruto merely sighed. Call it relaxation day, if you will. Things have been hectic lately, so it doesn't hurt to take a day off. Kushina chuckled as she placed her head on Naruto's chest. I suppose that's true. Naruto ran his right hand through Kushina's naked back, making Kushina sigh constantly. It would be great if they could do this for much longer, but things weren't that simple, unfortunately. Things are always complicated. There were still a great many things that needed to be done before they could just simply relax for the rest of their lives. Of course, afterwards, who knew? Too bad I'm not the only one, thought Kushina, the faces of Mikoto, Fu, and Enko appearing on her mind. But she wasn't about to complain any more than that. Considering that in a way she had helped in creating her only child's fucked up childhood when she didn't stop Minato in going through with his plan, she could live with having to share him with a few women. But the kind of awkward part was that one of the said women was her best friend. And that brought her to the shower that she had taken with both Naruto and Mikoto before they had gone to destroy Akatsuki once and for all. If someone had told her that one day she was going to have a threesome with both her only son and best friend, well, she would have laughed at the person. But it became true. Was that wrong? Kushina honestly didn't care about the answer to that. She was happy, and her son was happy. That was all that mattered in her opinion. Naruto looked at his other hand that he was not using to rub Kushina's back. He could feel with every passing moment how his body became adjusted to the power boost that he had received. Just lying in bed wasn't simply just for relaxation, although having his mother's naked body pressed up next to him was definitely an added bonus. The fact of the matter was that his body needed to become in tune to the changes that were taking place. It wouldn't do any good if he was moving around. That would only slow down the process, which meant it would take much more time for him to be in his 100% status, which would not be good. Oi, Kurama, thought Naruto, trying to contact his bijou, only to find silence as the response. What is that furball up to? Kyubi, what do you want now? No need to be so hostile, Chome. Chome snarled. My host almost died. How do you expect me dash? Oh, interrupted Kurama with a grin. And here I thought that you didn't care about the girl? What changed? Don't get me wrong, denied Chome. If she were to die, it would mean that my power would get dispersed and take a long time for me to come back together as one. I'm only worried about myself here. Sure you are. Chome snarled again. Is there any reason for you to have called me? Kurama sighed. Yes, there is, unfortunately. And what is that? Kurama pointed one of his tails to his left. Chome looked to where Kurama was pointing at, and saw what the problem was. Not him. Oi, you stupid fox. I want out now, screamed Shikaku as he appeared in between Kurama and Chome. Chome sighed in annoyance. He had been hoping not to deal with Shikaku ever again, but apparently it seemed that his wish had not been granted. Why exactly is he here? Asked Chome. He's still trapped inside the Gedo Mazo, explained Kurama, and since Naruto is now its summoner, he's able to communicate with you and now me because I'm nearby too, finished Chome. Hey, did you hear me, Kyubi? Tell that whiskered human to get me out. And released you out where, huh? Said Kurama. Just be patient. You'll be freed soon enough. Right, Chome? Why the hell did Kyubi have to drag him into this? He was never one for quarrels, damn it. Shikaku scowled, but before he could say anything else, Kurama released some of his power and killer intent upon Shikaku. I said your time will come. Just be patient, stated Kurama in a deadly voice, making both Shikaku and Chome stop on their track. Shikaku merely nodded before disappearing, having cut off the link. So the old Kyubi is still in there, thought Chome. There was a reason why you were the old man's favorite. Well then, Chome, began Kurama, it seems that you're progressing in your relationship with your host. Keep it up. You won't regret it, trust me. Chome merely stared silently at the spot Kurama had occupied seconds before. Niji sighed to himself as he walked through the village. It wasn't even a village really. It was, well, Niji didn't very well know what it was. He was returning from a private ceremony held by the rookies themselves to honor both Choji and Kiba, as well as Akamaru. The most affected were clearly both Shikamaru and Ino. Shikamaru lost his best friend, while Ino lost a close friend as well as her father. Hinata. Well, she didn't seem that much affected, which greatly surprised Niji. Kiba was one of her teammates after all, and from what he could gather, Kiba did seem to have had a crush on the girl. But Hinata was always paying attention to Naruto that she just simply ignored the young Inuzuka. Not that it would have worked out in the first place. There was just no way that Hayashi would allow his daughter to shame the Hyuga clan that way, even if he didn't think too much of Hinata. She was still a member of the main house after all. There was also that conversation that he had with Enko the night before. Wait. That was all they could do. If they did something, it could cause unnecessary drawbacks. Niji and Aisan. Niji stopped on his tracks. He looked back to see a very determined Hyuga Hinata standing in front of him. What could she possibly want, wondered Niji to himself. What is it, Hinata-sama? He asked her. Hinata shook her head. Not here. Follow me. Doing as instructed, a very shocked Niji followed Hinata. Why was he shocked? Well, the girl didn't stutter. Not even once. What the hell was going on? Niji narrowed his eyes as he walked behind Hinata. Could this Hinata simply be a spy, someone from a different village who was ordered to do reconnaissance on the village's status? But why change yourself into Hinata of all people? She was well known, well, sort of. If this was an infiltration mission, wouldn't it have been much simpler to hang out with some random civilian? And why ask for him to follow the person? Couldn't that jeopardize the mission? Unless Niji himself was the target, in which case it would mean an ambush. Niji shook his head from those thoughts. Maybe he was just overthinking things like Shikamaru, but that still didn't explain the sudden change in Hinata. Both Hyuga members stopped in a secluded area in the village with no workers, or villagers, or shinobis present at the moment. The reason for it? Both Hyugas didn't know. Hinata was currently facing away from Niji. Niji and I-san, began Hinata, I know for a fact that you're a traitor to this village. Niji's eyes widened to their maximum. How does she? Hinata turned to look at Niji's shocked face, but hers was determined. And I also know that you're on Naruto-kun's side. So, where is Naruto-kun? Alright, you too. It's almost nightfall again. You've been in there for an entire day. It's time to get out. Kushina chuckled as she heard Mito's irritated voice on the other side of the door and stood up from the bed and stretched in front of Naruto. I suppose she's right. It is time for us to get out. Naruto sighed, but he got up as well. Yeah, I guess you're right. An entire day, brat, you're not becoming one of those Nara, are you? Naruto rolled his eyes as he made his way to the partially open drawer in the room. He had taken a shower earlier in the day with Kushina, but at the end he didn't feel like going outside, so he simply crawled back to the bed, Kushina following his example. I'm just letting my body become attuned to my new powers. That's all. Whatever you say. Naruto didn't respond. He merely proceeded to put on the black and grayish armor that Mito had shown him the previous night. Kushina herself was dressing herself in her attire from before, Akatsuki cloak included. Once they were both done, Kushina kissed him one last time, and she noticed a necklace around Naruto's neck. What is this? She asked him, pointing to the necklace. It came with the armor, answered Naruto. The necklace from the Shodai was underneath. Kushina nodded. I see. Well then. The two Uzumakis then unlocked the door and opened it, only to find an irritated Mito and a partially amused Fuka on the other side. Finally, said Mito. Kushina had the decency to look sheepish and rubbed the back of her head. Sorry. Naruto didn't say anything. Forget it, said Mito, shaking her head before starting to walk further down the hallway, motioning for the rest to follow. The kid looks different now, thought Fuka, noticing the changes in Naruto. I wonder what happened. Where are we going? Asked Naruto. Mito glanced back at him before directing her gaze forward. Well, we do have time to spare, so I thought maybe a little trip was in order. We're heading to Yuzu, the homeland of the Uzumakis. Moist and cool. Kushina sighed contentedly to herself as the moist and cool night air blew against her face with small to little force. It was kind of refreshing. No, it was refreshing. It had been, hell, Kushina didn't know how long it had been since she had last felt like this. After all, She was about 7 when she was brought to Konoha to be used as the second Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. After that, she hadn't once ever returned to her homeland. But now she was, and the familiar environment was making her a lot more excited than she first thought that she was going to be when Mito said that they were heading to Yuzu. Currently the 4 Uzumakis Kushina, Naruto, Mito, and Fuka were on a local tourist boat that brought people from all over the world that wanted to visit nearby lands in the Land of Water. Of course they were already close enough to the island to where Yuzu was located in that the atmosphere was almost the same. Of course Yuzu would be a bit more moist, but still. They would dock at a nearby port village where they would rent their own private transportation. It seemed that Mito had saved a large amount of money from when she was alive. But that didn't come as a great surprise to Kushina. Mito was, or probably still is, the greatest kunoichi that the ninja world has ever known. And coming from a clan such as the Uzumaki, who was wealthy in its own right, but also the wife of the Shodai Hokage, who was also the leader of the great Senju clan? It would be a surprise if Mito didn't have any money. But there was one small setback, and that setback was Kiri. It was very close to where Yuzu once stood. But the Uzumakis weren't too concerned about that. Both Yagura and Yudakata were sent there to make the Mizukage agree to become part of the alliance among the Uzumakis, Uchihas, Kumo, and Iwa. And according to Mikoto, the Mizukage had agreed, for the moment at least. They were trying to keep the trip a secret for the moment, and it wouldn't do them any good if Kiri found out about it. But that should be fairly simple. They were merely going to see what remained of the once prosperous land of the Uzumakis. Or at least, that was all Kushina thought that they were going to do. Who knew what Mito had planned? Nostalgic, isn't it? Kushina turned her head back to see Mito standing by the doorway that led into the ship. Kushina herself had been standing outside by the rail, just simply enjoying nature herself. Mito was wearing one of her elaborate kimonos once again. How she could stand to wear those, Kushina didn't know. Maybe it had to do with the fact that Kushina was a bit of a tomboy, not that she minded being one. Kushina nodded and turned back to look at the water down below. Yes, it is. It's been forever since I last went there. I actually never thought that I would ever return, seeing as I was one of the last remaining Uzumakis and the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, not to mention the wife of the yondaime, so the village would have never risked sending me out. Mito chuckled as she walked up to stand next to Kushina. Yes, I can understand how that feels. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Both of us being the Jinchuriki for the strongest bijou of the 9, as well as getting married to one of the Hokages. That brought a frown upon Kushina's face. Minato, she hadn't thought of him much at all since she had come back to life. Especially since Naruto wasn't the greatest fan of his, or at least that's what Kushina thought. She honestly didn't know what Naruto felt about his father. She knew of course that there had to be some hatred if how they fought within the seal was any indication. But that was it. After that, it seemed that Naruto didn't give a rat's ass about Minato. Was that a good thing? Kushina honestly didn't know the answer to that. But how did she feel about her late husband? She couldn't really hate him for what happened between Konoha and the Uzumaki clan. He had no idea about it at the time, or afterwards. There was the chance of Sarutobi telling him, but that was a small one at best. That was one secret that generation didn't want to share with anyone else. But sealing Kyuubi into their son, but she couldn't place the entire blame onto him either. She should have done more to try to stop him. But if she had done that, then could any of this have been possible? The hatred within Naruto's heart towards Konoha began because of that. It was only him knowing about the betrayal of the Uzumaki clan that broke the final straw, in a figurative sense. And if none of this occurred, then neither her being with Naruto in the way they currently were could have been possible either. So, did she hate Minato? Confused, Kushina glanced at Mito to see said redhead staring at her. Yes, I am, finally answered Kushina. Mito nodded and turned to look at the cloudy night sky. I thought as much. Let me guess, does it have something to do with Naruto's father? The silence was all the response that Mito needed. What's the problem? Kushina sighed. I'm just wondering how I feel about him. I mean, I know that I did love him once. But now. You don't know how you feel about him, finished Mito for her. Kushina nodded. Yes, that's basically it. I know that I shouldn't blame him for some of the mistakes that Konoha has made. But for what he did to Naruto-kun. But I'm partially to blame for that as well. You're simply overthinking this. Kushina turned to look at her relative. What do you mean? Asked Kushina. Mito shrugged. It's simple. Naruto has obviously gotten over the whole deal with Yondaime. Yes, there still is resentment present, and will probably last forever. How much? Well, that's something that only he knows. But he realizes that it's pointless to dwell on that because the man is already dead. What's the point of dwelling on a dead man? Nothing, that's what. And he realizes that. Not to mention the fact that he gained a close friend, I suppose is the word. He gained a new friend from the selfishness of his own father. You're talking about the Kyuubi, said Kushina with wide eyes. Mito nodded. Yes. It doesn't take long for one to realize that they're obviously friends, or partners if you will. The point is that Naruto probably trusts Kyuubi, and vice versa. I never saw it like that. Muttered Kushina, remembering her own conversation with her son on that subject. Could he possibly trust Kyuubi now? And did that mean that he started to at least trust in her as well? Now that would be great in Kushina's opinion. It would also explain why he doesn't express any negativity towards you. He must know what you're feeling troubled about, that you could have done more to stop Yondaime. But like I said, by this point, he simply doesn't care. Kushina chuckled. I guess I'm really overthinking at the moment. I told you. Kushina then looked around. Where is he, by the way? It was Mito's turn to chuckle. He's with Fuka. Kushina's eyes narrowed. Is he now? Mito raised an eyebrow, partially amused. Feeling jealous? This caused Kushina to pause. After all, she didn't know how Mito would react knowing that she had a romantic relationship with her son. You can relax, said Mito, picking up on Kushina's hesitance. I already know about your relationship with Naruto. That caused Kushina's eyes to widen. How? Mito simply shrugged. I'm not so dense as to not see it. I mean, it is clearly obvious that you two are involved that way. Not that I care anyways. It's your life, not mine. Kushina slowly nodded, not sure what else to do. She just settled into just simply going back to enjoying the feeling that going back to her homeland brought her, Mito joining her as well. Naruto could only sigh in annoyance at all the jealous looks he was receiving at the moment. And why was he receiving those, you might ask yourself? Well, the answer to that was simple. And that answer was sitting next to him at the small bar that the ship contained. Fuka drank her drink happily, oblivious to the lustful stares that she was receiving, or the jealous ones that Naruto was receiving. Or maybe she was so used to it that she just simply didn't care anymore. But it was plain annoying to Naruto. And why shouldn't it be? If any of the morons wanted a shot at the redhead next to him, they should simply come up and give it a shot. It wasn't like he and Fuka were an item, although it probably looked that way to an outsider. Not that he would mind hooking up with the redhead, but he had more self-control than that. And he had Kushina, and Mikoto, and Anko, and Fu. Speaking of the mint-haired girl, the girl hadn't recovered enough to accompany them. She wasn't even awake yet. So Mito had left a bunch of white zetsus to guard her that Obito had started to manufacture, as well as a protective barrier around the house. So Fu was pretty much safe at the moment. And now they were heading to Yuzu. Naruto didn't know how to feel about that. It was where his family came from, well, one side of it. It would be interesting to see what Yuzu was like, or what remained of it. If he were honest with himself, Naruto wasn't expecting much. After all, the place had been destroyed for about 30 years or so. Who knew how bad of a condition the place was in? "Oi, you," said a voice from behind both Naruto and Fuka, breaking Naruto out of his thoughts. Naruto turned his back to glance at whoever said that, only to see that it was some random man who was currently staring at Fuka. Heh, so apparently someone had the balls to step up after all. Fuka for her part was still drinking her drink like usual, not even bothering to acknowledge the man's presence, something that he didn't take well, if the displeased look on his face and the twitching of his eyebrows were any indication. Naruto turned back to his own drink, although paying attention to see what would happen. Heh, this is going to be good. Naruto internally rolled his eyes at Kurama's excitement present within his voice, not that he wasn't curious himself. Would the man succeed? So far, it didn't seem like he would. "Oi, I'm talking to you," he said again. This time Fuka did sigh and placed her drink down on the table in front of her. "What the hell do you want?" she asked, not bothering to turn around. "My name is Hideyoshi Hibiki," said the newly identified Hibiki with a smirk on his face. "And I was just wondering why such a woman like yourself is bothering to hang with a loser like this guy," finished Hibiki, pointing towards Naruto. Now that caused Naruto to lose interest in seeing how Hibiki would do, in him becoming annoyed and plain pissed. Fuka chuckled. This idiot just made a big mistake, she thought to herself. After seeing what Naruto did to Konoha, well. Hibiki was a bigger moron now that she thought of it. "Oh," said Fuka, finally turning around to look at Hibiki, deciding to throw him a bone. Hibiki himself wasn't anything special. Dark brown hair with brown eyes, and a regular build, with black pants and a white sleeveless collar shirt, the collar up. But what made that last fact annoying was that it was obviously just Hibiki trying to act cool, not realizing that it did just the opposite. And what makes you a better choice? Now that caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow, his dangerous thoughts of what he was going to do to Hibiki were put on hold for a second. "What is she doing?" Hibiki smirked again. "Well, I can tell you that I know what style is, unlike him." Fuka had to fight back and laugh at that. "Yeah," says the man with his collar up, thought Fuka sarcastically. "What else?" said Fuka with a sultry smile. Naruto's eyebrows twitched, seeing where she was going with this. Hibiki continued to smirk and began to get closer to Fuka. "Well, I can totally show you a better time than he ever can," he whispered into her ear. He wasn't able to see Fuka roll her eyes and glance at Naruto as if saying, "Deal with him." Naruto snorted and went back to his drink. He wasn't going to do anything. She was the one who started this. Fuka rolled her eyes again. She would have to get her hands dirty, it would seem. "Sorry," she said with a dangerous undertone, "but I'm not that kind of girl." The next thing Hibiki knew, he felt immense pain in his lower body courtesy of Fuka's knee hitting his precious jewel. "So, get the fuck away from me." Hibiki merely stumbled back to the table where he had come from. That also seemed to discourage anyone else from trying to take a shot with the redhead. Fuka scoffed and turned back to finishing her drink before ordering another one. I was hoping for a bit more action there." Naruto merely ignored the disappointed Bijou. "Thanks for your help," said Fuka sarcastically as she started to drink a newly refilled cup. How many had she drunk so far? She couldn't really remember, and that was a sign that she was getting close to becoming drunk. Perhaps she should stop now. But as she started to drink again, that thought left her mind. "You're the one that started to flirt with the guy," retorted Naruto. Fuka snorted and turned to look at him, a challenging look in her eyes. "You wanna go, buddy?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. Is she drunk, he wondered. I would probably say yes. Fuka let out a small hiccup. No, I would definitely say yes. But she wasn't drunk a minute ago. Seriously, what the hell? True. Wait, The drink. Naruto glanced at the bartender who had served it and saw him looking at Fuka just like all the other men present, even if some were married, with their wives present. Yeah. Kids never do that. Ah, that explains it. Oi, don't ignore me. Something doesn't add up though. And what is that? Before Kurama could respond, Fuka growled at Naruto and punched him, only to fall when she tried to stand up. Naruto caught her before she hit the ground and sighed. What's wrong with some people these days? Naruto picked her up bridal style just as Kushina and Mito walked in. What's going on here? Asked Mito. Ask him, responded Naruto, tilting his head to look at the bartender and proceeding to walk out with Fuka. Mito narrowed her eyes and connected the dots. The bartender for his part was sweating bullets as he gazed at Mito. Said redhead had a dark aura surrounding her. She then walked slowly towards the bartender who was too frightened to move. Kushina shook her head as screams began to be heard throughout the bar. Seriously, what was wrong with some people? Naruto sighed as he placed Fuka on her bed who was beginning to stir. That was fast, remarked Naruto. And that was what I wanted to tell you. You Uzumaki are extremely resilient to any poison. So it's surprising that she was affected by that. My guess is that it must have been an extremely strong one, although it seems that the effects are wearing off already. Fuka then let out an extremely girly giggle. Or maybe not. Naruto really wished that he had a camera at this point. This was one of those moments where one wanted to keep it on record. His thoughts left him as Fuka made to grab him and succeeded. The next thing he knew, Naruto was lying in bed with an extremely hot woman. An extremely drunk/drugged hot woman. Naruto simply shrugged to himself. It seemed that stunt pulled off by the idiot bartender had opened an opportunity to him, and he wasn't one to say no to the gifts life offered him. With that in mind, he dived in. Soon, grunts and moans filled the room. When Kushina arrived later to check on her fellow redhead and relative, her eyes twitched in annoyance as she heard the sounds coming from within Fuka's bedroom. That little. Feel free to finish that statement. Danzo paced back and forth within his tent in his temporary camp. He was close to arriving at the Land of Iron. He suspected that he would be there by tomorrow night. That should give him enough time to set up everything to ensure that his plan could not fail once the meeting began. But he wasn't worried about that at the moment. No, his first priority at the moment was a disturbing revelation that he had just learned. There was a spy within his ranks. Said spy had been executed a few hours before, but that still didn't mean that the implications that came with this were any good. Hyuga Niji, just who was he working for? That was how he had found out about this. A meeting between the two was held, but his operatives hadn't told him fast enough. He had been too busy with the Nanabai Jinchuriki after all. But that turned out to be a failure in the end. And all because of the Kyubi Jinchuriki. Wait, could Uzumaki Naruto be behind this? But the operative had been placed in a genjutsu. A very strong one at that. And all the records show that Uzumaki Naruto had no talent whatsoever in that area. In fact, no Jinchuriki ever did. But then again, the boy possessed the Rinnegan. Could that have given him the ability in genjutsu? It was possible. There were many unknowns about that dojutsu. But just what exactly was the brat after? And if he had that Hyuga on his side, who else was? Danzo scowled. His moves were pretty limited while he was in Konoha. But if only he had known sooner, he could have captured the Hyuga and forced him to tell him everything. But if he had made a move, there would have been many cons with that. Unless he could have proved the Hyuga was a traitor, Tsunade would have used that against him as well, and probably disbanded Root. The Umbu that had not reported to him sooner was punished severely as well. Info like that needed to be given immediately, damn it. Even if he himself would have been too stubborn to pay any attention to it since all of his attention had all been on the Nanabai Jinchuriki. Not a good choice now that he thought of it. Danzo scowled again. There was nothing he could do now except to plan for the future. The Kage meeting for one. But that wasn't the only thing. He still had another card up his sleeve. And if he found it, then his chances became that much higher. Kabuto smirked to himself as he gazed at the island in front of him. With all the rebuilding in the village, Tsunade would not notice that he was missing. And even if she did, he would simply make an excuse. After all, what use could he be at the moment with all the reconstruction taking place? Kabuto then glanced at the scroll in his hand. All the information he needed to find what he was looking for was in it. And if he succeeded in finding it, both Naruto and Sasuke wouldn't stand a chance. Much like with Orochimaru, his long tongue came out of his mouth. Well, there was no point in just standing here. It was time to make his thoughts a reality. It was a very cool and even more moist of a late morning than it was the previous night. But that was due because they were now staring at the island where Yuzu was located. The only problem was the defenses. The defenses consisted of a bunch of whirlpools surrounding the entire island that would shred anyone to pieces. Especially if he or she tried to swim. And if by some miracle someone did get through the whirlpools, the island was protected by a barrier much stronger than the one Konoha had. Well, it no longer existed since Yuzu collapsed. But that brought an interesting question that was asked by Naruto. If the defenses were as strong as they sounded to be, how did the strike force sent to destroy Yuzu even get in then? Mito merely shook her head and said that even she didn't know that, which troubled her greatly. After all, she hadn't been present there when it had happened. The atmosphere between the Uzumakis was currently a bit awkward. Fuka herself was feeling the most awkwardness. She had sex with Naruto, well, she didn't really mind, but it seemed that the boy's mother did. Ouch. Naruto merely seemed oblivious to it all, but it was clearly all an act. Mito, for her part, could only laugh in her mind. Nothing brightens the mood than when sex was brought in within a group. So how are we going to get past these? Asked Naruto. The four Uzumaki were currently within a fairly medium-sized ship that Mito had rented. With insurance, of course. She knew the luck that followed those that were an Uzumaki. Simple, responded Mito, bringing her hands up to a hand seal. These whirlpools aren't naturally made. They are created by seals that we placed within the water. All you have to do is turn them off and the whirlpools will disappear. Of course you can't do this without being an Uzumaki, since only we know the seals for this. As soon as she finished, true to her word, the whirlpools disappeared. Naruto smirked as their ship began to move closer to the island. The Uzumakis were all about Fuinjutsu all right. Too bad that he wasn't near the level that Mito was. But then again, he didn't think anyone was. On that note, he wasn't near Kushina's level either. Why was that? Maybe because he wasn't a complete Uzumaki? Or he just simply didn't have the patience to learn such a delicate art? But Kushina had, and she was more jumpy than he was. So he guessed that maybe it had something to do with the former. A few minutes later, the ship touched shore. As Naruto inspected the island, he saw that it was bigger than he had first thought. Kushina came walking and stopped next to him, also looking around. It did not look good. There was still some debris present from who knows what, and that was just the shore. There was what appeared to be a forest growing, so it blocked what was beyond the shore. But from the shore alone, it basically didn't look good. You're impossible, you know that, commented Kushina. Naruto knew what she was talking about, but it wasn't his fault. Fuka came onto him, well, sort of. But once again, he wasn't going to turn that down. He would have to be gay to do so, and he clearly wasn't. Naruto simply shrugged in response. Kushina sighed, but didn't say anything else. What could she say? Behind them, Mito glanced at Fuka. Do you regret it? Asked Mito. Fuka shook her head the next second. Hell no. I was a bit out, but I was conscious enough to remember how it felt. And let me tell you, it felt good. Mito shook her head. Who would have thought that that little girl that she had picked up would turn like this? By the way, began Fuka, did you know what was in that thing that the bastard put in my drink? I've never before been affected by a poison. Well, not that I've been poisoned that often, especially just simply for trying to get in my pants. That bastard must have been really desperate. Mito nodded. Yeah, although I'm not sure yet. Once we're done here, I'll be able to examine it more closely. Especially since it's strong enough to bypass our strong immune system. That's not something you would come along very often. It was Fuka's turn to nod, yes, but how did that bastard get it in the first place? I don't know. Muttered Mito. She hated not having all the facts, just like not knowing just how exactly the invasion force was able to get through Yuzu's defense. All she could think of was a spy within their ranks, but that was impossible. The Uzumaki clan had always been united. Never had a civil war taken place between themselves, or any other conflict of that sort. So how? Mito shook her head. She would worry about that later. She had almost forgotten, but thankfully she now remembered. Alright, let's go, ordered Mito, making her way out of the rented ship, the rest following. The four Uzumakis walked through the sandy shore and before long, they were making their way through the small forest. And what was beyond that? Well, it shocked everyone but Mito. What is this? Said Kushina, looking at the desolated land. There were still partially destroyed buildings present, although they looked like they would fall apart any second. The ground itself was an ashy black. It seemed like it was burned, however that happened. Fuka for her part could only stare in shock. True, she had never really cared or thought about where she had come from, but still. To think that the place where she was from was reduced to this. Naruto merely looked around, an emotionless look on his face. Let's go, said Mito quietly. It had been a while since she herself had been here as well, but she had still seen it before, so she was more prepared for the sight. But the first time that she had seen it, well, she couldn't blame either Kushina or Fuka for how they were feeling at the moment. But Naruto, she had no idea as to what he was thinking at the moment. What are we looking for? Or are we simply just going to walk randomly? Asked Naruto. Mito glanced back at him. We're looking for a scroll that contains a jutsu. What sort of jutsu? Asked Naruto. It's an old jutsu that is the greatest Fuinjutsu that the Uzumaki clan has ever created, stated Mito. Oh, said Naruto, now really interested. Why is it still here? Mito looked forward again. It was lost after the invasion took place. Kushina's father, the clan head at the time, hid it somewhere, but I don't know where he did. Naruto suddenly stopped walking. Wait, hold up a second, he said and looked at his mother. Your father was the clan head? Kushina rubbed the back of her head and chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, I guess I forgot to tell you that, didn't I? The rest sweat dropped when they heard that. Mito shook her head. You didn't tell him that? I said I forgot, didn't I? Muttered Kushina. Wow. Thought Fuka, a sweat drop still present. Naruto sighed. Alright, so my grandfather was the clan head then, damn, I'm awesome. Mito chuckled. Yeah, but the point still stands that I currently have no idea as to where he hid it. It was the same as the last time that I was here. Naruto nodded, understanding. I see. Before any conversation could take place, footsteps nearby could be heard. I thought this place was deserted, said Naruto, although more quietly. Mito narrowed her eyes. It is, although that's how it was supposed to be. Kushina scowled. Trespassers then, huh? This could shed some light as to how the invasion force bypassed Yuzu's defenses, thought Mito. With that in mind, she headed towards the footsteps. Where is she going? Asked Fuka. Neither Naruto nor Kushina answered. They simply followed Mito. Seeing no other alternative, Fuka herself followed along. Mito landed on top of a small hill composed of more ash which probably belonged to some building, but she wasn't concerned about that at the moment. She gazed down below and her eyes narrowed once again. She thought. And indeed, down below on ground level, about 5 squads of were currently searching through the debris in the area. But from where? Both Naruto and Kushina quietly landed beside her, and a second later, Fuka landed behind them, just as quietly. Naruto's eyes flashed in anger as he recognized the present. This is Danzo's root division, he growled out. So it's Danzo, thought Mito. But what does he have to do with this? And what is he looking for, sending his here? But most of all, how did he even know how to get past the defenses? That bastard! Muttered Kushina. This wasn't on the scroll, thought Naruto, remembering the scroll with information on Danzo's business, both in the past and the present. Could that root member have tricked us? No, that's not possible. Something tells me that this is top secret to where Danzo doesn't have it on file, or tells anyone else other than the ones present in the operation. Even then, the information they receive might be minimal at best. What are we going to do? Asked Fuka quietly. We're going to kill them, of course, answered Mito. But keep at least one of them alive. We need to know what Danzo is up to here. They have a seal put on them that prevents them from talking, said Naruto to the others. Then how did you get that to give you all that information? Asked Kushina. It was thanks to Kurama, responded Naruto. The genjutsu that was placed on him override the seal completely, making it completely useless at all, unless the genjutsu were to be removed. How so? Asked Fuka. Naruto shrugged. I'm not entirely sure, but it seems that the wires, in a sense that curse seal has, are connected to the brain to destroy it immediately if any of them are deactivated. Probably because the person is no longer himself, just simply a puppet with human flesh and no rational thought process. Interesting, thought Mito, glancing at Naruto for a moment before turning her attention down below again. Well then, shall we? Both Naruto and Kushina grinned as they brought out their swords. Fuka merely ran a hand through her long hair as if to say, anytime. Mito nodded, and the 4 jumped down below. Down below the surface, Kabuto was up to his old tricks, or better tricks really. Thanks to the scroll that Orochimaru had left behind concerning both Uzumaki defenses as well as to where the jutsu that he was after was located in, he was now really close to the Fuinjutsu's location. Of course, he had no idea as to where Orochimaru had obtained the information, but he didn't really care at the moment. He had also seen Danzo's root searching the ruins of Yuzu probably for the same thing that he was, meaning that Orochimaru and Danzo had shared some things after all. But the scroll did not have the exact location. Of course he knew the general area, but it would be much easier if he knew where exactly the Fuinjutsu was located. Apparently the old clan head had a series of tunnels running down below from where his old house was located. He then hid the jutsu somewhere in one of these tunnels. I just need to find it, and then with the jutsu, along those 2, no one will stop me, thought Kabuto with a smirk. The last of the fell with a thud on the ground courtesy of Naruto stabbing him right through his heart. Fuka herself had been the one who had captured one of them alive, which came of no surprise. She herself was the best for those types of assignments. Alright, Naruto, do your thing, said Mito to the only blonde and male present. Naruto nodded and walked over to the captured that was struggling against the ninja wires that were restraining him at the moment. I wouldn't do that if I were you, said Kushina with a smirk. Just be a good boy and this will all be over soon. But the didn't pay any attention to her. He simply kept on struggling until Naruto kneeled in front of him, his eyes becoming ruby like those of Kurama. The made the mistake of glancing at him for just a second, and he was caught. He stopped struggling, and just simply laid there. Naruto then looked at Mito. He's all yours. Mito nodded and made her way towards him. Naruto merely stepped back to allow Mito to do the interrogation. It was Mito's turn to kneel, and she did it with ease. A feat that surprised those people that were alive and not placed under a genjutsu considering what she was wearing at the moment. "Alright, listen here," began Mito in a dark authoritative tone, "you're to tell me what exactly you're doing here, understand?" "Yes," answered the Umbu in a monotone tone. And then he continued. "We were ordered by Danzo-sama to search the whole village in search of a scroll containing some sort of fuinjutsu." "How did you get inside the island?" asked Mito with narrowed eyes, moving on with her next question. That was what was bugging her the most. Just how the hell did they get in past the defense of whirlpools? "We disable the seals that were generating the artificial whirlpools," answered the Umbu, getting a shocked look from both Mito and Kushina. "How?" asked Mito. "We were told by Danzo-sama the hand seals required to shut them off as if to make it seem as if we were of the Uzumaki clan." That was as far as he got as Mito sliced his head off with a kunai, a look of anger on her face. How does Danzo know about that jutsu, thought Mito, and how is it possible to deactivate the seals? Only an Uzumaki knows the right seals and precise chakra needed to do so. I didn't even know that was possible. What's going on here? Why did you kill him? Asked Kushina. He was useless now, answered Mito as she closed her eyes. I'm sure Danzo wouldn't have given him anything else other than what he needed to know. Kushina calmed down when she heard that. That was true. The Umbu themselves apparently had no idea what to look for, just simply a scroll. But the fact still remained that Danzo somehow got hold of the information about the jutsu that they were looking for, and that her father hid it somewhere. But from where or whom did he get it from? Naruto himself was looking around. It's too risky to use your chakra right now, Kurama. We don't know who else could be here. Kurama nodded within Naruto's mind. That is true. Just let Mito handle it. She also has the sensory abilities that you possess when you use my chakra. But still, it's surprising that there is anyone here at all. Naruto didn't reply. As Mito opened her eyes, there was a more intense form of anger in her face. What is it? Asked Fuka. We have another trespasser, answered Mito with a growl and started to run towards the center of the village. The others merely followed behind. Kabuto started to laugh out loud as gazed at the wall in front of him with the Uzumaki seal on it in the middle. After having unlocked who knows how many secret doors and passages, he had finally arrived. He brought the scroll up to read it one more time before throwing it away, not seeing any use in it any longer. He brought his hands together and formed the required hand seals at a fast pace. The required hand seals were about 85 in total. As he completed the final one, he muttered, "Kai," and the wall before him started to shake. It split in half, and both halves retreated into the walls on their respective sides. The room within contained exactly what Kabuto was after. Unlike the rest of the tunnels that were simply made out of the earth itself, the room before him was not. The floor, walls, and ceiling were made of marble, all colored in red, with candles as the only light source. How they were still lit, well, Kabuto could care less about that right now. And in the middle was one scroll. Kabuto walked inside, careful of any traps, but there were none. It seemed like the last clan head was confident that anyone who made it to this point was an Uzumaki. Pity he was wrong, thought Kabuto as he readjusted his glasses. As he finally reached the center of the room, he picked up the scroll and opened it. His face shone in glee as he kept on reading. Yes. Yes. Yes, this was it. At long last, it was his. Kabuto chuckled and pocketed the scroll before the snake that was always at his side started to hiss. Kabuto frowned. It seemed that someone else had found this place. Root? The snake hissed again, and Kabuto smirked this time. Ah, so it's Naruto-kun? Well, I'm not ready to face him just yet, so I should take my leave now. Mito could only scream in frustration as she and the rest arrived at the now empty room that was simply lit by candles. Damn it, she cursed. We're too late. Naruto frowned as he looked around and smelled the air. It smelled like snakes. Fucking Kabuto, thought Naruto. He was here. I should have checked to make sure that we were the only ones in here when we first arrived, said Mito in frustration. Kushina herself was frowning. But what else could she do? Fuka merely stayed silent, not knowing what to do herself. Mito, began Naruto, causing said redhead to look at him, just what kind of fuinjutsu is in that scroll? Before Mito could answer, White Zetsu popped out from the ground with a smile on his face. You, said Mito. Finally found you, said White Zetsu with a chuckle. How long have you been here? Asked Mito. I just arrived a few minutes ago, answered White Zetsu. Your chakra systems are the only ones in the whole island. Well, there is another one nearby, but that one is by one of the ports nearby already. Although it does seem familiar. Kabuto, thought Naruto. We could probably still catch him. That's highly unlikely. He'll no doubt disappear as soon as he reaches land. You're not the original White Zetsu, are you? Asked Kushina. White Zetsu chuckled. You got me. No, I'm not. I'm one of the clones. That would explain why his sensing abilities aren't the best or that recognized Kabuto's chakra, thought Naruto. And? What are you doing here? Asked Mito. We have a problem, answered White Zetsu. Naruto was honestly starting to see that this was not their day. Kabuto was a very happy, snake/man at the moment. And why shouldn't he be? After all that work, he had finally obtained something that even Orochimaru had wanted, but could have never gotten. How long had it taken to find the instructions on how to get through all the secret doors, the required hand seals? Orochimaru kept a lot of documents. Too much in fact. Not to mention the perfect opportunity where he could have left the village and no one would pay too much attention once he was gone. He couldn't have done it before though. He would have been killed if he had, why with Zetsu searching for him? Even he could not fool Zetsu when it came to sensory. That guy was simply the best in that. Or one of the top ones. But it didn't matter now, reflected Kabuto as he reached one of the ports on his small boat. Not fancy, but it got the job done, although there were many questions that even he was concerned with. How did Orochimaru come about all of this information? And why hadn't he tried to obtain the fuinjutsu if he had all of this information in the first place? And why hadn't Orochimaru told him about this? He was lucky enough to have found one report of it that made him search for the whole information. Oh yes, there were definitely many unknowns here. Could Danzo know any of them? Probably not, seeing as he had failed in obtaining the scroll, not knowing where it was. But on some other things. But once again, none of that matters right now. Kabuto was the victor of this battle, and he was going to savor it.